Hi everyone, I'm Dave and I love movies. So, welcome to my podcast, The Reaction Shot. In each episode, I'll dive deep into a movie of any genre that holds a special place in my heart. But here's the twist. I bring on a guest who has never seen that movie before, until now. We discuss, dissect, and review from pre to post-production to behind-the-scenes stories and well into its impact on pop culture. Will we agree on everything, or will we have wildly different views? Thanks for hitting play. Let's roll tape and find out. Fade in. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Reaction Shot. Here we are, episode 12. I have returning guest, Brittany Cunningham with me today. Brittany, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing good. So today's episode, we are actually doing a movie from 2004 called Closer. Brittany,
Yeah.
have you ever heard of Closer before me asking you to do this episode?
Yes, I have heard of Closer before. Because like I said in my last episode, that involved Natalie Portman, Garden State. That I absolutely love her. So at this point of 2004, I was following her career. So I've known of this movie. I just have never watched it until now.
Till now, yeah. Well, I'm definitely glad you got to check it out. I know we did talk about your love for Natalie Portman as an actress, and I was definitely shocked to know that you hadn't seen Closer yet, because Closer is actually a movie that has always stuck with me ever since I saw it 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that kind of just stick in my mind. I think about and the dialogue and some of the crazy things that are said. So I'm excited to talk about this in depth with you.
I'm
So
excited to break it down.
absolutely. What is your history with it? Like, what did you know about Closer prior to watching it for the first time?
Honestly, nothing. I just
Yeah.
remember the cover of the DVD or poster that they have for it, and I was like, "Ooh, look at all these hot actors and actresses together. This is
Yeah,
gonna be a good
right.
movie." And then I
Yeah.
just never watched it. I honestly, and I've always thought about it, but for some reason, never hit play. And after hitting play, I kind of figure out why, but I haven't figured it out yet.
You haven't figured it out yet. Yeah, well, thanks for pressing play, and thanks for, taking the time to talk about it with me. My history with Closer is, pretty obvious to all the other episodes we've done. I saw this movie at the theater opening weekend. It was 2004, so I was in high school. Oddly
Yeah.
enough, I actually saw this movie with my aunt. So
Wow. How
that
did
was,
that go?
yeah, it was pretty awkward.
Yeah.
I remember her, she loves a good romance movie, and I was obsessed with film, so I loved all the actors, and the trailer for the film just really stuck out to me. I really liked
Yeah.
the singer Damien Rice, who has a song that's pretty prominent in the film. So it kind of had the formula for everything that screamed, I have to go see this. So, she and I were like, hey, let's go check this movie out at the movie theater. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then halfway through, I'm like,
You're like,
oh boy, this is awkward. Why are we saying these words, guys?
like
Why
I
are we
gotta
talking about
sit
this? Yeah,
somewhere
I'm like, I don't
else,
know.
anywhere.
I don't know what these words mean.
Yeah, you're like, well,
Yeah. No, wow, it's so weird. So yeah, so my first time seeing Closer, it was definitely a little awkward, but at the same exact time, it's a film ultimately about relationships. It's classified as a romantic drama. I think the word romance is definitely used in a different type of way here.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I
For
think you see these actors, especially Julia Roberts at the time, obviously America's Sweetheart. She has done numerous amazing roles, and usually when you see Julia Roberts with the type of actress she's with, and basically the breakdown of what the movie is, you're like, okay, this is gonna be a romance, and we're all here for it. And you start watching, and you're like,
Like,
okay,
this is not a romance. This
that's
is
not
something
romance.
different. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
a
romantic
little
at
different.
all.
So the movie was released on December 3rd, 2004, with a estimated budget of $27 million for the opening weekend, it opened on limited screens. I think it was a little bit under 1,000 screens throughout the United States. It still made
Wow.
$7.7 million, even though it was, again, on a very limited amount of screens. So obviously it didn't, break any records for its opening weekend, and it didn't exactly become this huge hit in the United States. It only ended up grossing $34 million, so it was a little bit above budget, but to be considered a success, you want to make sure that you're making at least double what your budget is.
Yeah,
However,
absolutely.
yeah, for some reason though, there was definitely a bigger market overseas, and the worldwide gross ended up becoming $115.5 million. Therefore, super successful.
Yeah, that's good that they made their money back and then some.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't a bona fide hit right out the gate when it was released here in the United States. It did kind of get a following once it was released to home video, good old DVD and Blu-ray. So, kind of got a bigger following at that point in time. Searching around the internet, it seems that a lot more people are talking about this movie and the performances and the subject matter. So I'm glad to know that 20 years later, it still has a little bit of steam left in it.
Yeah.
The Rotten Tomatoes score as of today in 2024 is 68% from 218 critic reviews. So it's still considered a fresh film. Its audience score is actually a little bit higher. Audiences seem to enjoy it a little bit more than critics do. The audience score is 81%.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah. Usually I feel like in a lot of cases it's usually opposite. I feel like the critics, adore a movie and they praise it to the high heavens, and then, your audience watches it and they're like, why the fuck does anyone like this movie? It's definitely interesting to see that the audience was connecting a little bit more than the critics were this time around.
Yeah.
The Letterboxd score out of 5, it gets a 3.4. Metacritic, it gets a 65 out of 100, and on Internet Movie Database, it gets 7.2 out of 10. How do you feel about these numbers, Brittany, after watching the film? Where do you fall? What's your score out of 10?
Honestly, I would give it like a 4 or 5.
Okay.
After I finished it, can kind of see maybe why it's a little higher, but I'm a little confused.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's completely understandable. Again, feel like the subject matter of this movie, and that might not even be what kind of turns you off from it, but the way that the story unfolds and is told is definitely a little bit different than what you would see, especially for a mainstream film of this time. And I feel like there is a little bit of a disconnect. I do know that when I saw this movie at the theater, I really, really enjoyed it. And then when it came out to watch at home, I watched it again, and I did kind of feel a disconnect. I feel like I didn't fully understand the timelines. I think that's, something that isn't, you have to really be paying attention and kind of like map it out in your head, because it doesn't have any title cards like 4 months later, 1 year later. So
Which was
it kind of,
driving me insane.
yeah. And it's not that people don't understand it. It's just, it's not really spoon fed to you. But I feel like in the context of this film, how complex it is, I feel like it kind of needs to be spoon fed to you, so you kind of
Yes.
understand, because, as we'll talk about with the film, it jumps from, so this movie is based on a play. Did you know that?
I did, because I looked it up yesterday and I read the beginning and I found out like how old Sergei were, and I was like, okay, makes a little bit more sense. We're getting there. So I was happy that I found at least that.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. So the movie is based on a play, which, is pretty great. The play itself was written by Patrick Marber, who also wrote the screenplay for the film. So essentially he took his work on the stage and then brought it to a script format for film. They kind of, they give it a more cinematic scope. Obviously, as film goers, we don't really want to watch, two actors just stand in one consecutive place. However, when you watch this film knowing that it was based on a play, I feel like you can kind of see it. So that's where I feel like not spoon feeding the time jumps kind of makes sense, because when you're in a play, there's different variations to show you, like set piece changes. Maybe they add a different type of outfit, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do feel like when I saw it again, I was kind of like, okay, wait, it's just happening the next day? So
The
watching as I've
next
gotten older,
year.
the next year,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the film's supposed to take place over 4.5 or 5 years. So
I want to say
that's
it's 4 years because by the
okay.
time Alice and Dan are talking, she says this is supposed to be this is our 4th-year anniversary.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah. So
So it's been
yeah, so
4 years since they met each other.
gotcha. Okay, perfect. So film takes place in 4 years, and to everyone listening, if you watch this film, in no way, shape, or form, other than through dialogue, do they really tell you where we're at on the timeline. It doesn't jump backwards, it just keeps kind of cutting forward. So sometimes you have to really focus on where you're at to kind of understand what's fully going on. So
And the weather doesn't even
no.
isn't significant enough to even know what time of year it is. Where it's like, what is happening?
Yeah. Yeah. And,
What's happening?
I think Natalie Portman's character is really the only character that even has like significant,
Changes
features
in
that
her
change.
hair and
Yeah. Yeah. So, but again, I do feel like that's kind of, again, not saying that this is how you feel, Brittany, but I do feel like some people, researching online or people I've talked to have talked about how they don't really understand the timeline of the film, and it kind of, the way it plays out, watching it kind of seems like it happens in like a 3-day period, and you're like, this is the messiest shit I've ever seen.
Yes.
Can you imagine this whole
'Cause
film
it's-
taking place in 3 days?
No, because yes, because Larry and Dan are messy human beings.
Oh my
Like,
God.
but yeah, it was just, I don't think I realized the time thing until probably like mid to 3/4 of the way. Because I was like, wait, how old are these people?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But yeah, so whenever I watched it for the 5th time, I was like, okay, this makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Dedication. I love it, Brittany. Thank you.
I have to, because I'm just like, I need to figure it out.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, but like you mentioned, after viewing it multiple times, you kind of get it. So you're kind of putting all the pieces together. And again, this is not a complex film. This film has 4 speaking parts in it. There are multiple people that they interact with, and even if another person does say like one word, that's literally it. So we have 4 humans pretty much interacting with one another, and it's their story over a 4-year period of time. So those characters, those actors are Natalie Portman, who plays Alice Ayres, Jude Law, who plays Dan, Clive Owen, who plays Larry, Julia Roberts, who plays Anna. The film is directed by Mike Nichols, who did the iconic film The Graduate. Closer's literally about human emotion, the psychological warfares that we play in relationships, and it's a very raw film. So this is a mainstream Hollywood film, but it also feels like an independent character study. I feel like they really get to the nitty gritty of that human emotion, and they just let it, they just roll with it. They let these characters have these honest conversations that some people in relationships have, others shy away from.
Yes.
It's not to, yeah, and it's not to say that these conversations they're having are wrong, but sometimes they are very intense, but sometimes you have to have those conversations. So it was cool to see this movie like really go there and not be afraid to hold back a little bit to scare away, the mainstream audiences who were coming for a romance film. Julia Roberts falling in love with Jude Law and Natalie Portman and Clive Owen. It's wild.
I could just picture my younger self like, this is not Richard Gere. What is?
Yeah, what is happening?
Because honestly, that's what I thought at one point. I was like, okay, can I kind of break away? Like, these are 2 different people, Jill.
Stop that. So out of these 4 characters, who was your favorite and who was your least favorite? Characters, not actors.
My least favorite was Larry. He is a skeezy, just creature. But yeah, no, I'm not even going to give him justification of anything. He's skeezy. I think my favorite, I honestly don't know. Maybe Dan, but in a way that's like, I don't know. I'm gonna say that for right now.
Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, well, when we walk through the film, maybe we'll pick up on different things and our answers will change. So,
Yeah,
needless to say, none of these characters are really likable in a
they're
way.
not. Yes, because they do like different things that you're just like Alice is manipulative.
Mhm.
Like Dan's a gaslighter. Anna's kind of both at the same time. Larry's gross.
Yes. Larry is gross. So one real quick fun fact, since we're talking about Larry, Clive Owen
Mhm.
plays Larry in the film, but he was actually in the original play, and he actually played Dan.
Oh,
Wild, right? So
wow.
yeah, I think I find that very interesting because I'm not 100% sure how long, uh, Clive Owen was committed to the stage play, but
Hmm.
to put that much time and study into a character such as Dan, who's literally the polar opposite of Larry,
Yeah.
and then to go into a film and literally, shake off everything you remember about playing Dan and playing Larry.
Hmm.
Pretty crazy stuff. I think that shows pretty great acting, to be honest, to be able to really jump into those. I'll be honest, I can't really see Clive Owen playing Dan. I don't know if it's Jude Law's performance that makes me not be able to see that, but I feel like Clive Owen was just perfect for the type of character that Larry is. Not to say I
Yeah,
think
like
Clive Owen's that type of way.
no, like, and Larry's like an alpha male, and you can tell that, and Dan is not at all.
No, no. Dan to me is just like a very reserved, very mopey. He's kind of
He's
out of
a
touch.
he's a like a starving artist. He's
Yes,
out of
yes.
touch with his own reality.
Mm. Yeah, he lives in this fantasy land. He doesn't quite understand. He thinks everything should be perfect. Everything should be. He romanticizes everything, and he falls in love way too quickly.
Yes.
He abuses the word love, and anyone who gives him a little bit of attention is
Just hops right
me.
on it.
Yeah, he's like, wow, I love you. Let's
Yeah.
let's be together until I find someone else who looks at me.
Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah. So with that being said, I think my favorite character as of this moment of our conversation, before we jump into it, my favorite character would be Alice, because I feel like even though you said it right, even though she is very manipulative, I also feel at the same exact time she's the most honest, and I think that
Yes.
honesty, which it's funny, we'll get into some of her honesty,
Yeah.
but I feel like she's a very closed book, but when she is in tune with somebody else, she's very free and open. So
Mhm.
I think it's cool that she, kind of does that to keep herself safe, and when she's not happy, she is ready to move on. She doesn't waste her own time, she doesn't waste their time, and she's just, this isn't working anymore, I'm out, goodbye. So
Yes.
that's why I think I would pick her as my favorite character, and then my least favorite character would honestly probably be Dan, just because he is so out of touch with everything, like we just mentioned. I think Larry is a horrible. If I knew him as a human, I would absolutely despise him.
Oh
But
God.
as most of these people should
God.
have.
Yes.
But at the same exact time, just like Alice, Larry to me is very in touch with his emotions. Not that I agree with them, but he is in touch with who he is, what he wants. He says it out loud. Yes, he's a big old dick about it, but he it just to me that comes from the honesty. And I feel like Anna, Julia Roberts' character, I feel like Anna is just one of those people who doesn't really give a fuck about anyone's feelings, and just she's kind of she's so reserved and so cut off that nothing even really matters. Does that make sense? Do you agree?
Yes. Yes. And actually, you saying that their characters mirror each other. So, like, Dan and
Mhm.
Anna are the same person, and
Yep.
then Larry and Alice are the same person, because even Larry says, we'll get into that, but what
Yep.
he says to Anna at her exhibit is very telling, because she didn't see what he saw
Mhm.
and what the
Yep.
audience sees at that point of how
Yeah.
she's speaking.
Perfect. This movie. Cool. Well, I guess we can talk a little bit about, so the beginning of the production is, all the actors got together, and, they did some read-throughs. They did some of the big scenes together. So originally, Kate Blanchett was signed on for the role of Anna. So Julia Roberts wasn't even attached to this film at all. And it came
Hmm.
down very, very close to filming, but Kate Blanchett was pregnant with her second kid. So she actually ended up not being able to do the filming based on the outline of like the time frame of her pregnancy. So
Yeah.
they ended up replacing her, and the director, Mike Nichols, was deciding between two actors. He was deciding between Julia Roberts and Nicole Kidman. How do you think Anna's would be different if Nicole had played her over Julia? Not to take away from either of these actresses. I mean, I don't know how you feel about both of them. I respect both of them a lot. I do
Oh,
think they would have different
1000%.
takes. Yeah.
Yeah, they would. And I'm trying to think, like, would Nicole be Australian? Would she play an American? Would she be British? Because Kate Blanchett is British. So would she,
Mm-hmm.
like, I feel like they would have changed the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an interesting movie.
Yeah.
But then again, it also kind of makes sense that if Julia Roberts was, not to say second, but like she's brought in late, that might be why I have like a chemistry thing between Julia Roberts and Clive Owens. Like I didn't
Mhm.
feel there's some parts that just didn't feel authentic. And I think that's what also made me not really like the movie. Because I, again, loved them both as actors. But I don't know if that was a thing. And I actually watched another movie that they're in that I guess people kind of correlated that with Closer just to see. And
Yeah.
I still kind of feel that way. So
Okay. Okay. No, I mean that movie you're talking about is Duplicity, right? Duplicity?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've actually never seen Duplicity, so
It's not a bad film, but it was just, again, a little off.
Gotcha. So you like both of them as actors, you just don't quite feel the chemistry between the two of them?
As a romantic
Gotcha.
couple.
Romantic duo. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so when you mentioned to me that you didn't feel the chemistry between the two of them, I did have like my take on it. I feel like what you just said about this other film kind of won't align with what I'm about to say. But taking Duplicity out of it, when you told me that you didn't like their chemistry, what I was thinking was, I agree with you, but at the same exact time, I think in relation to their characters, I felt like it almost worked that way because I feel like Anna is so cold and cut off from having those emotions, and you know we see her upset, we see her sad, we know that she had a bad past, and because of that bad past, I feel like she does have this like super closed off regard. And my thought to you saying that you didn't like their chemistry was, you know, was Julia Roberts' take on playing Anna, did she really give into that side of her just not really, you know, letting herself feel these things and, you know, feel the love that everyone's talking about in this film? And maybe that's why it didn't work out. But to know that they didn't really have chemistry in another film obviously aligns with what you said. So, but I was kind of chalking it up to hope that it was just, you know, how they were playing their characters. But damn,
But it
all right.
honestly might be still their characters because they play like these two agents and they're in the same thing and they have to like dupe their bosses and it's like a whole thing. But
Gotcha.
also too, I think in this, because they don't really know each other, I think that's why the chemistry is not there, because do they actually have chemistry or is it just the way that they met type
Okay.
deal?
Yeah. No, that's fair. And you know, I after watching it after you told me you didn't really like their chemistry, I definitely I picked up on it. So, but you know, for anyone watching the film, go into it with an open mind, and you'll see their characters and how they are. And for some people, it may just work, or you may not even notice. But also with this
Yes.
film, Natalie Portman's character Alice Ayres is a stripper. She's a reformed stripper who ends up going back to her old ways. There is a rumor that they actually filmed a bunch of nude scenes with her at the strip club. And
wow.
when Mike Nichols was doing a screening of the film and saw the first cut, he said that he felt like it didn't align with the character, that because at the end of the day, all of his characters do have these guards up. So even though she's a stripper, we as an audience never see her fully nude. She's not out on the dance floor, you know, whether she's doing that or not. We don't see her out on the dance floor, you know, performing for a bunch of people. She's in an intimate setting, and that's when she opens up, as opposed to being, you know, around a bunch of people. So Mike Nichols thought that just didn't work out. So they actually reshot some things with her clothed, and it's rumored that Mike Nichols actually burned all of the footage of Natalie Portman nude because he said that it's unfair. Yeah, he says unfair for those images to be out there, especially after not using them for what they were used for. So true or not, I think that is great that he did something like that, and I do feel like it would have taken maybe a little bit away from the character if, she was, prancing around nude in the strip club. So a
Agreed.
good little thing
And good
there.
on him for doing that, because there are directors and writers out there who, or not writers, but directors out there who would not give that same courtesy, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, pretty sad, so yeah, good for Natalie Portman too. And, I don't know if she maybe had a say in it. Maybe she kind of noticed that with her character as well. But yeah, so kudos to Mike Nichols for doing that. Right as filming started, Natalie Portman gave Julia Roberts a necklace that said cunt on it in honor of their characters' foul mouths. I think that's pretty funny. I get to see Natalie Portman handing her.
She's so funny. Like, and it just revamps what I said on Garden State. Like, who was it? Method Man should have just said it. It's just like, it's okay, do it again.
Yeah, titties. Yeah.
Titties.
So Natalie Portman gave Julia Roberts that necklace, and then at the very end of filming, Julia Roberts had a gift for Natalie Portman. So Natalie Portman opened up that gift, and inside the box was a necklace as well, and it said Lil Cunt. Yeah, so we have Cunt and Lil Cunt running around after the filming of this film. So
I love that. I hope they still have that.
I hope they do too. What a great gift. Love that for them.
It is so cute. It's like, for my girly.
Right? You imagine just like walking down the street, someone be like, "Oh my god, I love your necklace. What does it say?"
It's like, what's it say? What it says. I was like, okay.
It says can't. I just can't. Yeah, I just can't with life.
Just can't deal today.
Yeah. All right. So this is the background of the film. This is, everything that came together. And then, of course, the film was released out into the world. And here we are 20 years later, almost to the 20th anniversary. And you're getting to witness this movie for the first time. And we get to talk about it. And I love it. So we're going to jump right into that. So the film starts off with a black screen and the title card, Closer, kind of, moving across the scene, and we open up in a busy street. We are in London, and throughout these crowds of people, we see Natalie Portman's character, Alyssa Ayres, walking very, very confidently. She has bright red hair, and she has a jean jacket with a bunch of fur all over it, and she's smiling, walking through, and her and stranger are locking eyes walking through this crowd. And that stranger is Jude Law's character, Dan. During this scene, the opening scene starts off with a song by Damien Rice. Are you familiar with Damien Rice at all?
Yes and no. Like, I remember seeing the name. A friend of mine in like middle school, high school, she would always give me music to listen to, and he was always on the list. Gotcha. So I was familiar with the song. Okay. Whenever it started playing over the first scene.
I think the song is a perfect start to the film. I think lyrically, vocally, the aesthetic, it fits very well with the aesthetic of the film. So a very good choice with choosing that song to start everything off with. Damien Rice used to actually, when I was in high school, used to be one of my favorite singers. I loved his music. It was so alternative to everything else that was out there. It's very, guitar heavy, super emo. But
yes,
yeah. So, but were you a big emo fan?
Yes, probably too much.
Okay.
My mom would always be like, "Why do you listen to bizarre music?" I'm like, "It's not bizarre."
Oh, it's so funny. It's so funny. Well, speaking of that, several quotes from this film have been used in songs as lyrics or as titles. So, for example, in Fall Out Boy's song "Thanks for the Memories," the lyric "He tastes like you, only sweeter," which is what Anna says to Larry about Daniel when they're fighting in the apartment.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Fall Out Boy also has a song called GINASFS. And the lyric in that song is, "I love everything about you that hurts," which is a line that Larry says to Alice in the club. And then to top it up, and to top it off, probably the most popular and most prominent one is Panic at the Disco's debut album. They actually have two songs that are they're quotes from this film. The one song is "Lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off," which is a line that Alice says to Larry at the club. And then there is a second song on the album that is in between these two songs. There's an intermission, and then there's another song. And the title of that song is "But It's Better If You Do," which is the response to what Alice is saying to Larry at the club. So she says, "Lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off." but it's better if you do. So I think it's pretty cool that, this film kind of became prominent in these.
And just music, pop culture. I
Mhm.
love that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, so kudos
And I
to.
love Fall Out Boy, so the fact that that even is a
Yep.
correlation is
Now
crazy.
every time you hear that song, you'll be like,
I'm gonna
yep,
sing it
yep,
different. I'm gonna sing it
yeah,
different.
Larry and Anna, yeah, just keep fighting.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So while Damien Rice's song is playing, they're locking eyes. Alice decides it's time to cross the street. However, she is not supposed to be crossing the street at this time, and she gets hit by a taxi cab. She immediately, is knocked unconscious for a few seconds, and this Dan character goes running over to her as well as some other people to check on her, and Dan turns her over, and Alice looks up into Dan's eyes, and she says, what does she say?
Hello, stranger.
Hello, stranger. That's the first line of this movie is hello, stranger, which I'm going to be nerdy for a second, is a wonderful way to start this movie off because at the end of it, does any of these people really ever find out who the other is fully?
No.
At the end, we are still all strangers. So, hello, stranger. We as an audience are the stranger to these characters, and these characters are strangers to one another, no matter how much they use the word love.
Yes. Yes. And I even wrote
So,
that somewhere in my
did
notes,
you?
that you don't really
Look at
know
that.
somebody until you know them. And even then, do you know them? You
Yeah,
don't.
I mean, some of these characters together for several years, and I always make a joke that I'm in a happy relationship, but I'm a sucker for sad songs. I'd rather have a divorce album than have a wedding album. I like romance films, but at the same exact time, give me a movie like this any day. These character studies and these hurtful things that people say to each other because you know um it's wild that some people get in these scenarios and this is real life and it's not always rainbows and butterflies and sometimes you just got to hit these imperfections head on. This movie kind of opens up that world and kind of like, hey, you got to have
Sure
these
does.
conversations.
Yeah. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
uh, So Dan decides to go to the hospital with Alice to make sure that she is okay. And when this movie does start off, you kind of do have a romantic film vibe. They're very flirty with one another, and it works. To me, their chemistry works really well, especially in this opening scene because I'm like, oh, these two are cute together. Like their
Agreed.
conversations, and yeah, I mean, it's Alice isn't afraid to ask the questions, and Dan's not afraid to answer these
Answer.
questions. Yeah, he's very
Yeah.
open. So it's kind of like, great. These two are going to be perfect for one another.
Yeah. I wrote two strangers having an interesting meet cute. That's what I said
Very
about them.
meet cute indeed. Yeah, they have some cute little conversations back and forth. She's gonna go, got a clean bill of health. As they're getting to know each other, they're outside of the hospital, and she decides to start smoking a cigarette. And he says, I don't want one. I've actually quit. She's like, okay, cool, awesome. So again, this conversation of trying to get to know each other. Instead of getting a cab and leaving one another, they decide to start walking through the streets of London, just kind of looking at different scenery. They walk into what is this, like a memorial, like a cemetery memorial area?
Yeah. Like a
Courtyard. Yeah, so they have, a bunch of people who have passed away and they have their tombstones there, and Alice is just kind of admiring them while they're having these conversations, and this gets her to ask questions about his family. Just your basic opening up to one another, how's your father? How's your mother? What do you do for work? They get onto a bus together and he lets her know that he is a writer, and she's like, "Oh, a writer, that's so great." And he's like, "Yeah, I write obituaries." So
Yeah.
he talks about it being like the Siberia of writing. So he kind of
Uh-huh.
get lost in the shuffle, and he doesn't really feel like his job is important. He doesn't feel so he's kind of a down on luck his guy. He's a
Mhm.
down in his luck guy. He wanted to be a novelist. He ended up settling for being someone who writes obituaries. So she finds that very interesting, and they have a cute little conversation about that. And she gives a little bit of background that she came from New York City. She escaped a bad past. So I don't remember if she talks about what her past was in this moment about her being a stripper. We talked about it already, but
Yeah. I don't think she honestly ever talks about her past. At least
okay.
not like that, besides the guy that she left.
Yes. Yep. So when she was in New York City, she left the guy. It was a bad situation, and she came here to London to kind of just start over and start fresh and not have anyone judging her for, anything. And they have a cute little moment. And, as they're talking, they're staring at each other. And she's like, "Look at your little eyes." And
Right.
he's staring at her and he says, "I can't see my little eyes." I don't
I
know. I
know.
thought that was
Which
silly.
is so like Jude Law is just so sweet.
hmm He's
That's
like,
maybe why I like Dan, because I love Jude Law.
yeah, he's in a weird way. And I'm not saying this about people in general, but he's just such an innocent person.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel like he's not fully capable to speak his mind about how he actually feels. Does that make sense?
Yes.
He kind of bows down to the people that he's with, whether it be relationships, whatever. And I feel like he just kind of lets them, take the conversation wherever it needs to go, and that's where his feelings are at that moment. So doesn't really
And I
speak for himself.
think too, because maybe on how his mother died and how young he was, and like his relationship with his father is probably a reason why, but we don't know that because we can't really go into depth because they never do. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's why he's very just reserved and shy and quiet, because he doesn't know what he should actually say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very true.
And Alice disarms him, hence why he tells her that he's very disarming, calling it a euphemism, even
Hmm.
though she's like, that's not a euphemism. He's like, it is though, because
Yeah.
of how you are and what I'm saying to you
Yeah.
for no good reason. I'm just like word vomit.
Or yeah, it's man, yeah. That's very true. It's funny we talked about questions. So they're getting to know one another. So he's giving answers, she's asking questions, he's asking questions. There is a trivia online. Someone took the time to do this. I love people that do these little weird things. I love them.
Yeah.
Keep doing them, people. There are approximately 510 questions that are asked between the characters throughout the film, and that works out to be around 5 questions per minute based on the runtime.
So they're asking questions with questions. That drives me insane.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that is, like you just mentioned, we still don't even really know these people, just like the characters.
Yeah.
We get these little tidbits, and we can form together an idea, but we never fully get the stories. We never fully get, who was this guy that Alice was with in New York City? Why was it a bad situation? Why did she run from it? How is it making her better or worse? Or, does she need to seek help, or whatever the situation might be? We're not learning any of this stuff, and it's just kind of matter of factly. And it's, that's all intentional. It's not, if anything, this is great writing. It's not bad writing. And it's
No,
just wild to me.
it's not bad writing at all. It's just like these people are just so messy.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, being a person is messy, so like
hmm
fair, but to
Yeah.
actually watch it for 2 hours straight, you're just like, what is actually happening?
Yeah.
I hate this. I would be the friend and
yeah.
be like, y'all need to just break up. It's
Yeah.
over. We can't do this
Yeah.
anymore.
Don't go have dinner with him. That's dumb.
Yeah,
Like, come
that's
on.
stupid. Nobody wants that. You don't even want that. Stop
No,
fooling
no,
yourself.
no.
Yeah.
God. Yeah. So Jude Law is running late for work. So, ultimately what they're doing here is they're spending time together before he gets to work. He finally makes it to the building. He goes to head in. He swoops around real fast and decides, fuck it. Who needs to go to work today? We all have that feeling. He thought this meet cute moment was the perfect reason to just not go to work. Let me talk to this person. He says, she asks him what his name is, and then he asked the same exact thing. She said her name is Alice Ayres. And immediately we jump cut to Julia Roberts taking a picture.
Which, before we go to her, whenever they're walking down the stairs and they're talking about like leaving somebody that you love, and she says, it's the only way to leave. I don't love you anymore. Goodbye. You don't leave somebody you still love. And he was like, you're telling me that you wouldn't stay? And she's like, no, I gotta go. Like, that's
Yep.
silly. Why would I stay? So the fact that he has that mindset and a girlfriend, Ruth, crazy. But like, go
Yeah.
off, sir.
Go off, sir. Yeah, so I love that you brought that up. That's a great line. It's very true to what we learn about Alice as a character in this film, is that, if she's not happy anymore, she's gone. It's goodbye. why stay with someone that you no longer love? All you end up doing is just hurting that person over and over and over and over again. So, I think, as harsh as it might sound, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it takes,
I don't think it's
I
a
think,
bad thing either.
I think it takes guts to be that honest, not only with yourself, but with the other person. Just be like, I don't love you anymore. Goodbye. And
Yeah.
I'm going to take my shit and I'm going to go. And we're
Yeah.
going to move on. And you're going to have the rest of your life. I'm going to have the rest of mine. Thanks for the moment you gave me. But the end. So,
And especially in a romantic situation, because obviously they were never friends because they just met and started
yeah.
dating.
Yep.
Therefore, that was the only relationship that they would ever have. It's all or nothing in
Mhm.
all of these relationships because of
Yep.
how they met. Like they never built an actual relationship. It was
Yep.
just dating.
Yep.
Ugh.
Wild. Yeah,
Hate it.
so Brittany mentioned in that conversation, Dan does say that he has a girlfriend and her name is Ruth. So, of course, they're like, oh, well, shit, I have a girlfriend. So you would like to think
Right?
that means that nothing's going to come of it. But so,
Exactly.
yeah, so she says her name, Alice Ayres, and smash cut to Julia Roberts working a camera, and we see what she's taking a picture of, and it's not what, it's who, and it is Dan. So Dan
Mhm.
is getting his headshot taken. He has written a book. So right here, we're like, okay, this is a little bit further in the future.
Yes.
Mr. Obituary Writer is now a published author, and he has a novel that's about to come out, and he's getting that headshot taken by Anna. The character's name is Anna. She is obviously a photographer, and she has already read the book. She got an advanced copy, and it's about this girl named Alice who was a performed stripper from New York City. So that is what the book that he wrote about. So we know at this moment in time that he used his, meet cute with Alice to write his first novel, and it's about to hit the shelves. So,
Yes.
how did you feel about this scene? This conversation between Dan and Anna. There's some flirting. It doesn't really seem like Anna's getting into it as much, but Dan is very, very flirtatious. And again, at this moment in time, I don't think we fully know where Dan stands with relationships and things like that. With is he with Alice or not? So while having this conversation, we know he wrote a book about her, but where do they stand? What do you think about the scene?
So this scene, until her name was mentioned, I thought this was Ruth. So
Yep.
joke's on me. But
Second.
I thought the banter between the two of them was really hot.
Mhm.
And like they had chemistry. They were just bouncing off of each other. She wasn't giving in to the fact that, oh, you're this big writer. Like, chill. Let me take your picture. Let's be done with it. Whatever. I don't know, as they get into it, you can tell it's gonna be a red flag, but you just don't know how, because the fact that he asks to smoke in her
Mhm.
loft, it's like, oh well, a year ago you weren't smoking. So what has influenced you so much to do that again?
Yep. Yeah. So that was, one thing to call out for sure was the smoking thing. So, here he wants to have a cigarette, and when we had last heard, he had just stopped smoking and was happy with it. He talked about people who had passed away from smoking, so he didn't want to be that statistic, of course. So, what has changed in his life? We do now know that it is about a year later. While they're having this conversation and, they're trying different photograph positions, he's now standing up, and he tells her how pretty she is, and that he says, "You're beautiful," and he says, "I'm going to kiss you," and she says, "I don't kiss strange men."
He
So,
says, neither do I.
yep,
And I was like, oh my God, it's so hot. I can't.
yeah. So he says, "Neither do I." Yeah, like Brittany said, the chemistry between the two of them, this dialogue, the
Is
way you mentioned, and you said it perfectly, the way they're bouncing off one another, like it's so fluid and it just works, and they
yes.
kiss, and this kiss he's
Electric is what I
electric.
wrote.
Electric, yeah. He's very into it. She's not turning away from it, but she's not fully kissing back at first. And then
Correct.
I feel like she finally lets herself go into it, and they are full on making out, but it's not overly sexualized. It's a very romantic kiss. Like you said, it's very electric. Like you kind of feel it. And then right
Yes.
before it really goes further, the camera snaps. It takes a picture and it
Mhm.
kind of
And it snaps her
snaps.
back to reality.
Yep. Yep. And she's like, we can't do this.
Yeah.
So why can't she kiss him? Does she talk about anything about her life? Does she feel guilty about anything? And you at this moment in time, you kind of want them to let this happen, and
Uh-huh.
that's when she stops and she was like, "Do you and this Alice live together?" So
Yep.
she might be feeling guilty about something, but then she calls him out on something that he needs to be feeling guilty about as well. So yes, they do live together. So he and Alice are still together. She is very much still in the picture. And she then mentions that she is also married. And now she's frustrated. I think, like you said, that the camera taking a picture kind of snaps her out of it. She really thinks about it. She's like, oh wait, you live with this person, I'm married. And now she seems very frustrated. Now she's I can't believe I let myself do this. She's very anxious, kind of moving things around, but she's anxious, but at the same time, very composed. Like she has such a dominance. She's so prominent with how she feels that I don't know. She seems, at the same time, she kind of feels tough. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, agreed. Because she's like, first off, I'm taking whatever you just tried to snatch away from me back, because Dan is a gaslighter for
Yes.
sure. Whenever he asks her, "Am I a stranger?" she goes, "No, you're a job." Which I was like, "Yes, girl, you tell him, get away from you." But like at the same time, he's like, "You ruined my life," and she says, "What are you, 12?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not doing this because clearly you are not being honest with what your relationship is with yourself, with her, and with me. And you're trying to, like, I think she can tell because she is an artist. Just like they're all artists in their own way, the three of them. I don't know what Larry does besides be a doctor and be creepy.
Facts.
I can't stand him. He's so annoying. Like, Anna is clearly his next muse in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep.
he's just jumping around because he doesn't know what he wants. He wants something, he just doesn't know what it is. So he's going to try to find it in other people, other strangers.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, he randomly meets Alice on the streets of London, and they have a cute little interaction and conversation. So now he's automatically in love, and he pieces out, tells Ruth to GTFO, and now he and Alice are together. And now he's having this moment with Anna, and as you mentioned, it's electric. Their chemistry's perfect. So now he's like, I need this woman. Like this is what I want. So he then mentions that Alice is on her way to meet him outside of the studio.
Which was so crazy. Like, you already called her. She's already walking to you, and you're just making out with this girl? Like, come on, dude.
Yep.
Get it together.
Yeah, and Anna says, "Why are you wasting her time?" And he looks at it, he says, "Well, you're judgmental." And she says, "You're devious." And he says, "I'm not wasting her time. She's completely lovable and completely leavable." And she said, "And you don't want someone else getting their dirty hands on her." And then she says, "Wow, men are crap."
Yes. She's completely lovable and completely unleavable. Not leavable.
Unleavable. Yep. Unleavable. Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, and it's like, why would you string her along? And then whenever I read and like that play says it's a play, he's 35 and she's probably 22 at this point.
Interesting.
And like, because by the time Alice actually says her age, she's 24. Therefore, it's years have already passed. So she would have to be like 21.
Wow.
Whenever all of this is happening originally. This
Crazy.
is how many times I've watched it. Like, I'm just doing the math.
No, it's good. No, I love it. I mean, hey, that's what this podcast is all about. Us opening eyes to one another. You have some fresh eyes on the film. So yeah, it's love it. So the doorbell rings and Alice is there to pick Dan up. And as he's walking to go get the door, Anna tells him to stop, and she tells him to fix his shirt because his shirt is untucked in the back from their little electric moment together.
Yeah.
He goes outside to meet Alice and hopes that they can get out of there. And I don't know. Alice, she kind of seems a little suspicious of him referring to, the female photographer and stuff. And, she's like, I want to meet her. Let me go in. So she comes in and she meets Anna. What do you think? What do you think this scene is between the two of them, the conversation that Anna and Alice are having?
Again, I wrote Alice gives off manipulative vibes because, like, you can tell her intention walking up the stairs, she was going to find something. She was going to look for something or stay there until she found it. So I think, I don't even want to say that she trapped Anna's character, that, like, full conversation, but she had a motive. Of going up there and doing, like, going to the bathroom, speaking the way that she does, stopping and saying, take my picture. Like, we're not at that immediate part yet, but it's the fact that she's inserting herself in a world that wasn't necessarily meant for her, but she's going to make it about her because of the connection with now Dan. Like, these two ladies have Dan as their connection.
Yeah. So Alice asked to use the restroom, so she walks off. This leaves Dan and Anna together. We hear a door close, and Anna reminds him, she is beautiful, and he says, I've got to see you. And she's like, no, like, you're not gonna see me. I don't want trouble. Yeah, she's like, I don't want trouble. You're taken. And he kind of makes this face like a child. He kind of
pouty face. He's just like, oh my God, really? Yeah, really, get out.
Yeah, like, I can't believe you're telling me no.
Yeah.
He reminds her, I've got to see you. And he says, well, you kissed me. And she says, what are you, 12?
And it's funny too, because he reverts back to himself, throws a cigarette in his mouth and lights it and just stares directly at her like, dude, you're childish. Leave my loft.
Leave my loft. Get out of here. Come on. So Alice emerges from the restroom and she comes over. She goes right into Dan's arm. She turns to Anna and says, will you take my picture? I've never been photographed by a professional before. And it's just kind of like, sure. Yeah. And then Alice is like, no, I'll pay you too. So she's like, let it just be us girls. So Dan's like, all right, I'm going to go to the pub around the corner, have a good smoke and some beer while I wait for you two ladies to take this picture. And Dan shakes Anna's hand and goes on his way. So now we're left alone with Anna and Alice.
And let's be serious. She could never afford Anna as a photographer. I'm just going to say that point blank period. Like, that woman is about to have an exhibit.
Yeah. This loft, like,
that loft
lined.
is probably $1 million, which I'm obsessed with the loft. I need that loft.
It's so nice.
It's so cute. And it's just, like, so artistic, and you can tell her whole style is in that one room, which I really like. And it's also, like, her personality, so it's kind of weird of how she is, but the series of Strangers kind of makes more sense.
Yeah.
The photos that she's taken.
Yeah. Yeah, the photography aspect. I mean, Anna didn't know Dan whenever he came in. And again, as you just brought up, the stranger aspect of everything. Like, we're constantly meeting strangers every single day. Who are we letting in? Who are we not letting in? Who are we falling in love with? Who are we not falling in love with? Like, it's just a string of events. And Anna, we really kind of see Anna's character here as well, kind of see her intentions and how she is as a human. When they're having a conversation while Anna's getting her camera ready, she asks what Alice does, and Alice mentions that she is a waitress at a cafe. And after she says that, Anna's response to her was basically, she says, is that temporary? Is that a temporary thing?
Which, annoying question, really rude. Don't do that.
Yeah. So so Anna immediately, she just kissed Dan's woman, who is now in her loft, and Anna is kind of defending what might have happened by beating Alice down psychologically. So, you're just a waitress at a cafe.
Yeah, so, like, don't do that.
Like, look at me in my big loft and all of my pictures and all the money that I'm making from these things. So,
and I just want to ask, how do you even get there? What were you doing before that? Probably waitressing. Don't be that girl.
Exactly. Yeah. So, this Anna's character really shines just with that one singular line. Rude. Yeah. So Alice gets all ready for her close-up, and as they're taking the picture, Alice is asking a bunch of questions. Who's your last boyfriend? And she responds, my husband. And she then tells Alice that she has a great face. And what else is happening in this scene? What comes of the scene of her taking pictures and their conversation?
She tells her that she heard the whole conversation between her and Dan, and that she knows that they kissed. She felt something was off whenever he went downstairs. Like, what's up with that? And Anna says, I'm not a thief, Alice, because her husband left her for a younger woman. So she's essentially doing what her husband did to her to somebody else that she just met.
Yeah, messy indeed.
Messy.
And very, very psychological too. It's very, patterny. And so while that conversation is happening, Alice is obviously admitting all of these things about what she knows. Now she's walking around as opposed to just sitting down for her picture. And she heads over to a window and she's looking out the window. Anna's trying to steer the conversation to something else to get Alice to stop talking about what's happening. She asks her if she wants some vodka, and Alice quickly turns to her very angrily, very sad, very hurt, with a singular tear falling from her eye, and she says, just take my picture. And God, Natalie Portman, your tears, love them.
Always believable.
Yeah. And we said it in Garden State too. I'm like, give her tears an Oscar. Those bad boys came just rolling down her cheek.
They do work. She's such like an emotional actor, and I love it. Like, she's so good. She's so good. Yep. But I will say this part also felt manipulative. Like, the whole time I watched this movie, I did not trust Alice, not one bit. And it bothered me. Because I was like, who is this girl? She's clearly not who she says she is.
Yeah.
But then it kept going, and I said, I mean, maybe she is.
Maybe.
She's not.
Maybe she is.
I don't know.
So now, the picture's taken, and now we're cut to a whole different scene. We're assuming that it's at a different time span at this moment in time, and this scene is very dated in terms of
chat rooms.
So basically, we cut to Dan. Dan is lying in bed. He's smoking a cigarette. He's in his robe, and he is on a chat room called London Sexanon, and he's talking to somebody. And the person says, hi. And Dan says, how are you? And, come here often. First time. I'm a virgin. Welcome. What's your name? So he's speaking to this person on the other side. And, we assume it's a woman, but we learn on the other side of this computer, it's a man. And that man's name is Larry. Larry is played by Clive Owen. So Larry is in what looks like an office. He looks like he's a doctor. So he's in his office at a hospital with the blinds closed. He's on his computer, and he's in a sex chat room speaking to who he thinks is a woman. But it's actually, I think, Dan uses the name Anna. He says, my name is Anna. So now he's like, oh, nice to meet you, Anna. And they have very, very dirty sex conversations. And, they go into descriptive details about what each other's doing. Again, Dan is pretending to be Anna. So, he's saying, I have really big tits and I want to suck you senseless and sit on my face, you fuck boy. The things that are being said are just so
absurd.
So absurd. And like the way they're using like old school texting, like the you are like the letter U and then the letter R.
Yes.
It is a little dated. I feel like some people, give this movie to Gen Z and they'll be like, what is this, like Snapchat chat? I don't understand.
Snapchat chat? I love chat rooms. Growing up, like, I went to one too many, and that's a whole different story, but like,
that's for a different podcast.
Yes, it is. But like the chat rooms, it was a thing for a long time. A lot of TV shows had chat rooms, and like Yahoo had a chat room. Buffy the Vampire Slayer had a chat room.
Oh my god, maybe we spoke on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
You never know. I went on that thing daily.
Oh, I was Hollister boy.
Yes.
Boy with an eye, don't forget.
Always. Boy with an eye. Always. But I will say also, whenever he is in the chat room in the very beginning, the blinds are not closed yet. He just locks the door first. Because you see everybody in the waiting room. And I was like, this is so insane that you are at work just doing the diddly without a care in the world with people behind you.
Yep.
Stress me out.
You're not wrong.
Again, creepy doctor.
Creepy doctor indeed.
Grey's
Um,
Anatomy would never.
yeah, well, what the hell, Grey's Anatomy? We never did this scene. Come on now.
Yeah, like because they knew better. They're like, no, not that. Oh,
Yeah, so this conversation, I'm not gonna get into the nitty gritty of all the dirty things they're saying to each other, but you guys get it. They
yeah.
definitely say a lot of
It gets
perverted things.
intense.
It
It gets
does. Like,
intense.
yeah. Meanwhile, please remember, everyone listening, I saw this with my aunt. So
Which again, how do you didn't get? You're like, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom, and then just like
yeah,
never come back. You're
never
just
come
sitting
back.
in the
Yeah,
lobby, like,
like
oh
sorry, I
hey, I
tripped.
got lost.
Yeah, I
I
tripped and
just sat
fell,
out
hit my
here.
head. Yeah,
I
hit
waited
by
for
a
you
taxi.
though. Yes, I had to sit out here. But the part where Larry says Jesus, I also said Jesus simultaneously as him because it was like Jude was just going, and I was like, oh my god, Dan, chill.
Yeah,
You
Dan
have too
literally
much time on your hands.
Dan's any crazy sex thing you could say. I think Dan says
He
it,
said
and
it. He said it.
so Larry is. He's like, dang. The phone starts
Yeah, like
ringing, and
okay.
Larry slams that phone down and whatever. So
Which Clive
they've
Owens is hilarious for that. Like he comedically in this movie, he says some really funny things and does some really
oh yeah,
amusing things, and that
no,
was
I
one of
agree.
them.
I agree, no doubt. So they Dan pretending to be someone named Anna. So obviously he's using Julie Roberts' character as the person that they're speaking with. Um, you know, Anna reaches her climax, so the conversation is now over. And he says, the Anna character says, let's go ahead and meet, whatever, let's do it. So Larry then says, let's meet at the London Aquarium and then hotel. And then
Yes.
yeah, so he says, how will you know me? How will you know who I am? And Dan says as Anna, bring your white coats. So
No.
Larry's
I
like, all
said
right,
Larry
guess
has been duped. See you at the aquarium.
see you at the aquarium. I love your notes. I want to read your notes. They sound fun.
Her scribbles.
I take pride in my handwriting, but when I write notes for like things like this, or even like if we're on a
Yeah.
call at work or something, I would like if I show them to somebody, like, oh, sorry about my chicken
And
scratch.
you're like, what does that even say? You're like, I don't even know. Let's just
Yeah, just go with it. What do you
this
think
is
it
fine.
says?
This is
What's
fine.
yeah? What's the most intellectual thing you can come up with? Because I'm pretty sure that is what it says.
Yes. Whatever you think it says, yes.
Cool. So now we're at the aquarium. Larry is walking around the aquarium looking for this Anna woman. He just knows that he's going to go back to that hotel after the aquarium and get some good loving based on that conversation they had. So he is wearing his white coat and he stumbles upon a woman sitting in front of one of the fish exhibits, and he looks at her, and it is Anna. So we know this to be an Anna character, and he says, "I got the coat." And she kind of like looks at him like, okay.
Who are you? Like, go away.
Yeah. And he's like, remember, feel free to call me the Sultan. And she just kind of looks at him
she's like, okay. Like,
yeah, so
who are you?
yeah. So now they're meeting. So Larry is meeting Anna by getting duped, literally. This wasn't who he was speaking with, but now he has met someone named Anna, and now they're having a conversation, and they're talking a little bit, and immediately before getting to like really know anyone, he says,
Yes.
you mentioned a hotel? No rush. I just have surgery by 3. And he's like,
she's like, wait, you're a doctor?
Shit.
So funny. But I love how she also, like, Julie Roberts, her genius, she grabs her purse and slowly moves it towards her, like, who is this man? Got a skadoodle. Because he's about to steal my shit.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, scripted or not, Julia Roberts, I feel like all these characters, all these actors just know how to get into the role, and like you said, little things just like grabbing the person, pulling closer to her, like that's amazing.
Agreed.
Yeah, so basically we find out in this moment that, she kind of tells him, I think you were tricked by somebody, and he's like, no, like I was talking to you, and she's like, I think you were talking to a guy named Daniel Wolf.
Yes,
and
he was catfish before catfish was even a thing.
yeah. Everyone got the idea from Closer to start catfishing crazy.
Honestly.
Yeah, they thought they would get their meet cute after some catfishing, yeah.
Little did they know.
Little do
They
they
just
know.
had a show made about that.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, so she's like, I think you were talking to a guy named Daniel Wolf, and he's like, no, I was not talking to a guy. Only a woman would say those types of things to me. Very typical, cis straight man
Yeah,
saying,
saying like, I would never be attracted to a man. Why would I ever have such
yeah,
conversations? No, sir, you actually did. So
yeah, yeah. He's like, no,
good
there's no way
job.
a man would say those things.
Yeah, say those things and get me. He was about to say it, and she was like, no, definitely was sorry. Thank you. Like he's got that shit.
Yep. Yeah, he's like he's confused. He's like, so why would he pretend to be you? I don't understand. And she's like, I think he likes me. And he was like, funny way of showing it. Why can't you just send flowers? So now their conversation has kind of kicked it up a notch. Now they have this foundation to speak about. They're talking about this guy named Dan. So they decide to go on a walk together. And they're walking the streets outside of the aquarium. She talks a little bit about Dan and who he is. So he's learning about this guy, and she goes to take a photo, and he's like, "No, I don't like being photographed." And he goes and grabs her balloon. So again, these two they're flirting a lot. So now they're in a way they're kind of meeting the same way Alice and Dan did, kind of randomly, and they met as strangers, and here they are spending time with each other. And now we jump to a scene with Alice and Dan. What's going on in this scene with Alice and Dan?
I'm not sure what happens after that, but they getting ready for the exhibit, right?
Yep. So they are
Okay.
in I think someone's apartment, and they're
I
getting
think
ready
it's
for the
Dan's
exhibit.
apartment.
Yes. Yep. Dan's apartment. They're getting ready for the exhibit, and Alice is all dolled up. She's ready to go to this thing. Dan's shaving, so Alice uses this opportunity to kind of open up a dialogue that she hasn't yet been able to have. And she says, "I love you. Why won't you let me?" And he was like, "I'm only leaving for a weekend." She's like, "Why won't you let me love you?" And
But she never answers that question.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's annoying because
so annoying.
What do you mean? Like, what do you just answer the question? So stop avoiding it.
Yep. So they end up at the exhibit, and while they're there, the two of them are walking around, and we see a close in on Anna, who notices that Dan is there with Alice. Alice kind of gives her a fuck you look and keeps walking the other way. And as we're kind of scrolling through the exhibit, we see the photograph that Anna took of Alice, and it's the picture of Alice with that wonderful Natalie Portman tear streaming down her face, and it's so it's such a candid
beautiful
shot. Yeah, it's a great picture.
I said her photo is beautiful. Period.
And I love the shot of, so not only are we seeing the photo in the exhibit, that's obviously like life's like really big. We also see Alice standing in front of it, smoking a cigarette, admiring the photograph of herself in a very vulnerable state. As she's standing there admiring it, Larry is also at this exhibit. He walks over to Alice and strikes up a conversation.
Yeah.
She's asking, what do you think about this? Some people don't appreciate arts. And, these two just kind of getting to know each other. He reminds her that she shouldn't smoke. And he's like, oh, I'm a doctor. I'm supposed to say things like that. And she's like, oh, cool. You want one?
Dermatologist. Like, what?
So silly.
Yeah. And he almost takes one because obviously he has smoked before. Because he was no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, fuck, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great moment. Yeah. So he's like, are you seeing anybody? Are you seeing anyone? And she's like, yes, I am. He's actually right over there. She says, talking to your bird. So there we cut over to Larry looking over and is leaning into Anna, admiring,
smelling her.
He's leaning into her, smelling her hair. Like,
bro, what are you doing?
And he's like, Dan goes, is he here? And Anna says, yeah, he's there. And she looks back, and he sees Larry for the first time. And now at this moment in time, we assume that now they are together, Anna and Larry. So after meeting at the aquarium by basically off of a prank, they are now together. And she says, I believe you two are acquainted. And he's kind of like, what? I've never seen him before. And she says, no. Kind of slyly, she said, you've spoken. Well, you've conversed on the internet. You corresponded on the internet. So then he realizes what he did. He's like, shit.
which he panics, like, maybe you shouldn't have acted like the person you've been stalking for long, like, stop
Yeah.
being weird again.
Right. Yep.
Be an adult.
Literally. So
Mm.
while Dan and Anna are having this conversation on the other side of the room, their significant others on the other side of the room having a conversation and being very flirtatious. And Larry even puts his hand on Alice's face and kind of caresses her skin a little bit as they're
Which was
talking.
so
And
inappropriate, but so
yeah,
hot again. I was like, oh no, no.
yeah, like
These two, their
they
chemistry,
work.
insane.
They work well. They really
Insane.
do.
They do. They do. It was crazy. I was like, this is so diabolical. All of it.
Mm-hmm.
All of it's bad.
It's crazy. I do love, though, that right after that happens and then Larry turns away from her and starts walking away, she then turns around back to her photograph and she actually has some tears forming in her eyes. Like she knows that
Yeah.
none of this is good. She knows where this
Yeah.
is headed. She ends up,
Agreed. I felt that emotion. I was like, damn, she's like, this is over. Like, I know she felt that was the moment. Like, she
yeah,
talks about Dan having a moment, like that was her moment and realizing, but I think she was still holding on.
yep. Yeah, so Alice ends up walking over and grabs Dan and she waves goodbye to Anna, kind of like, oh, see you later, bitch.
Like, yeah, like whenever she called her tall, I was like, why are you against tall people?
Yeah, literally,
That
though.
was so rude. Because she's
so
very tall. So is he. Like,
Yeah, right?
what? I'm tall. Leave it.
Right.
I took offense to that. I was like,
Yeah, what
you do
about
that.
it?
Yeah. Like, what about being tall that we have a problem with?
Yeah, I totally forgot that she says that she's so tall.
Yeah.
So
Like, it was an insult.
awful. It's the
Yeah.
worst thing we can pick out about Julia Roberts right now. She's so tall.
Yes. She just has such long legs.
You mean that long-legged woman over there?
Yeah. The horror.
So they head outside, Dan and Alice, and get ready to go into a cab. He tells her that she's going to miss her train to hurry up, so go ahead and take this one. And she goes off on her own in her own taxi cab. Another one comes along, and he decides, I don't want to take this one, so I'm going to go back inside and have a little conversation with my old pal Anna.
And the fact that he even pretended that he was going to even get that cab was funny. Like, I thought he was going to turn around and walk right back in. Like, that was his plan all along. He was already doing that before they walked outside.
Yep. Yeah. So Dan's back inside and him and Anna start having a conversation. They're out of the main part of the exhibit and kind of in the center of the building. And here, through a piece of dialogue, we learn that a year has passed since the last scene whenever she met Larry. So we assume now that they've been together for an entire year. And she even tells him, like, I haven't even seen you in a whole year. And he's like, yes, you have. And we find out that he's been, quote unquote, stalking her outside of her apartment and things like that. And he's like, that's not stalking, that's lurking.
Right? No, it's stalking. But also, I think Larry and Anna have been together for 4 months, but I think it's been a year since Anna and Dan have met.
Okay. Yep.
So it's been, we'll say it's been 2 years since him and Alice have met, and it's been. But like that's what I don't understand about Dan is because, like, did he know? He had to have been around enough that he would know that she would be at the aquarium. For him to say that, to like go out of his way to then talk to this random guy on the internet and be like, oh yeah, I'll be at the aquarium. Like, dude, you knew where she was gonna be. And I think that's why he panicked so much whenever he was like, no, we have to talk about this. And she was like, there's nothing to talk about my relationship with this man that you ended up setting us up because you're the dumbass, not me. Thank you so much.
Yep. No, that's perfect. The timelines are just a little off.
Oh, they're everywhere.
So yeah, it's good to.
That's what I mean. Like, it was so. I was just like, none of this makes sense. But whenever you actually like sit down and go to the timeline, it does make more sense than anything.
Right. Yeah, I think this movie would have benefited from just a little bit, even if it's some different creative. Yeah, the
weather, like the different seasons, it could have changed a lot. I agree with that.
Well, but that's hey, you did good.
We can't. Yeah,
we can't change it now.
We can't change it now. If we figured out the timeline, we're good.
Next time when they reboot this movie, we'll figure it out.
We can get a.
Yes, we'll get into that.
Yes,
we'll get into a modern day one. So
Yes.
while they're having this conversation, Larry's actually peering from the inside of the room. He can see through the glass windows. And he's watching the two of them have a conversation in the middle of the building. And you can tell he's kind of taking it all in and a little suspect. While they're speaking out there, Anna tells Dan, "I'm not in love with you." I mean, she really stresses it, and he says, "You just lied." She's kind of
Yes.
taken aback by him and stares at him. And when he said that, Julia Roberts' take on her response to that, her facial expression is very stone cold, and there's also a little bit of tears in her eyes. It's kind of like whatever. So he walks away from her and turns around and he says, "I'm your stranger. Jump."
Chills.
So I don't know. They're definitely
They're so messy, and it's like, we could have rooted for you if this is not how you met her, like the things that you've done. Because like you would want somebody to jump for you, because again, you meet strangers every day. So like you want that person that you fell in love with to jump for you. And that's probably why he doesn't actually love Alice back, is because he loves her and he can't love more than one person. But like it's just he's infuriating.
Nope.
It's damn. Yeah.
So Anna goes back in to be with her man Larry, and as she approaches him, he says, "Hello, stranger." And she says, "Hello," and he seems a little cold, a little off, a little off put, and basically he wanted to know why she was out there having a conversation with Dan, and she's like, "Well," his father died," and she's like, "Were you spying on me?" He refers to Dan as a little stringy fucker.
Oh, he's like, I thought he was gonna be shorter by his head. I was like, how does that make any sense?
We got the talls and the shorts here, guys. Come on now.
Yeah, they're funny. But I love how, again, they did this thing, like Larry talked about Dan's height and Alice talked about Anna's height. That's so funny. That's so weird.
I never really caught that before.
Me either, until you just said it. He's a stringy fuck. He sure is. Yeah. But they're not even that tall. That's the thing that actually drives me insane. I'm probably taller than both of them. Maybe not Jude Law, but definitely Julia Roberts.
Oh, for sure.
I won't even get in the height of actors because I go down literal rabbit holes on how tall people. I do. My friends, I text them all the time. I'm like, so and so is this height, so and so is this height, so and so. They're like, why are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, next on the reaction shot, a very special episode where we learn about the heights of every actor.
Yes, like Maggie Smith from Hook. She's 5'5". Who knew?
Oh, no.
Her Professor McGonagall or whatever her name is in Harry Potter. Didn't know it, and I was like, can't unsee it.
Wow, no idea. Look at you.
And see, by your face, you're like, I can't do it, but you want to. You're thinking about it.
Pulls out phone, types in first name you can think of.
She's checked us. It'll take you down. It'll take you down for sure.
I love it. Well, hey, thanks for
You're welcome. Fun facts is that nobody needed to know. Yes.
No, hey,
that's welcome.
That is what we're all about here at the reaction shot.
Yes.
Yeah. So outside of everyone making fun of heights here, it's conversation between the two of them. He's really trying to
snarky.
Probe her. Yes, he wants her to say something that's going to really piss him off, and he's kind of taking everyone down in the situation as well. And he even says to her, "You forget that you're dealing with a clinical observer of the human carnival." Wow.
Which I found very interesting because he had just told her that Alice isn't who she says she is because she's playing everybody. Yep. And she's acting the way that she does because she knows that nobody is actually seeing her, but Larry sees her. Which Anna gets mad about, and she says, "You seem more like a cat that got the cream. Stop licking yourself." I was like, damn, that was, I don't even know what that means, but that was spicy.
Right. Yeah, it is spicy. And I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, or I heard that, I was like, whoa. And then he responds, "That's the nastiest thing you've ever said to me."
Yeah, and his face lit up like he was into it. And I was like,
he loves it. He's craving that fight.
He wanted her to react and be like bigger than what she has been, I guess, the last 4 months that they've been together.
All right, now the screen kind of fades fades white and then fades back in, and we cut to Anna in her loft sitting in a chair. She looks like she's in very deep thoughts. Yeah, she's really thinking, very deep thought. And then we also cut to Alice, who is in her pajamas asleep on the couch as Dan's returning home. Yeah, here we are. These scenes, the next however long it is definitely some of my favorite scenes in the film. It's very tough to watch in terms of, that as an audience what's going on, but we kind of feel like in this moment, okay, now everything's going to kind of come to a head, and things are going to implode. And as Dan's coming home, he wakes Alice up and he says, I have to tell you something. She's like, what? And he's like, you're going to be hurt. And he says, I've been with Anna. So she kind of looks at him and she's processing, and then she just walks away from him. There's no verbal response. It's just kind of, I don't want to do this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Before we can even get a reaction, then we cut to Larry, who is coming home, and he's coming home into the loft, and he sees Anna up there, and he says, don't move. I want to remember this moment. The first time I walked through the door, returning from a business trip as a married couple. I'm greeting my wife coming home from this trip.
Whenever he said that, I was like, they got married?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so again, we're in another time jump, and they're now married, and super nice loft, and he just got back from his business trip, and he goes up the steps of the loft to meet her, and he goes to give her a kiss, and she's kind of very standoffish about that kiss. It was reminiscent of the kiss at the beginning with her and Dan. When he first starts kissing her, she's not very into it, and that's kind of what just happened. But instead of giving into it at all, she just walks away from it. So he's kind of like,
and he says, "I missed you," and she says nothing to him. And
nothing
it's like,
else.
okay, like, are we good? I just got home. What's up?
Yeah. So he's super excited to see her, and he missed her a lot, as you mentioned, and he basically asked her if they want to go to the bedroom and be intimate with one another, and she's like, I've already taken a bath. So he's coming home to his wife, and he's excited. He wants to cherish that moment, and we just know that something's off for obvious reasons. And before we kind of get further into that, we jump back to Dan and Alice, and they're having the conversation, and he's like, I just want to say that I'm sorry for everything. And she's like, I just don't understand why you never told me. And he says that, I'm a coward. And she's like, but why? Is it because she's successful? And he says, no, it's because she doesn't need me.
And it's been 3 years since they've met, and she didn't have a house to stay at. That's why she's at his apartment. Like, she was homeless, and she's in a different country. So yeah, this girl just relied on you for the last 3 years, and he's over it.
Yeah. So she's asking him questions, and they're tough questions. Did you bring her back here? And yes. And she, she's crying. She says, you're such a piece of shit. And I don't know. They're acting in this scene. Natalie Portman is just, again, so
phenomenal.
Good. Yeah.
Yes.
And she says, you're a piece of shit. And he says, deception is brutal. I'm not pretending otherwise.
What does that mean? Because I heard that and I was like, I kind of get what he's talking about, but I don't.
What it means to me, a deception is brutal. I'm not pretending otherwise. I think he knows exactly what he's doing, and I think he knows every time he makes that advance towards another person, he knows exactly what's going to happen, what the domino effect is, that the butterfly effect of what is going to happen from that one deceptive moment. So when he kissed Anna, it set off a shockwave of changes with these characters, and nothing was going to be the same. Regardless if Alice ever found out, regardless if Anna and Larry ever met, the lives of these three people have changed, even if in a very minuscule way, it changed. So he knows that by doing these things, he knows exactly what he's doing. So he knows that by doing that, it's a brutal thing, and he will never pretend that it's not going to be, but he can't help it. It's what he craves. So deception, I guess, is something that gets him excited. That's romance to him. That, not necessarily deception per se, but that excitement of, the bad stuff. Acting, like I'm doing something bad. Yeah. acting on those impulses and knowing what the outcome will probably be.
But do you really think that he thinks that it's bad, despite the fact that he's doing it to another person and he feels bad? But do you think he thinks that it is bad? Because I feel like feeling bad and thinking something is bad are two different things.
I think he craves the attention and love, and when things start to go a little bit sour or someone gives him that little piece that he feels like he's missing, then that's what he clings on to. Oh. Yeah, does that make sense?
Because Alice needed him whenever they first met, because she got hit by a car, and then he didn't necessarily need her anymore, but she was just there.
Yeah. Yep.
She needed him because she clearly needed a place to stay, and they were like in a relationship. But I mean, it was within a year of them meeting, or we'll say a year and a half, them meeting, him writing a book, and him meeting Anna. Like, so it was just gonna happen regardless of who it was. I think like what you just said. It doesn't matter who it is. It's just the moment of the event.
Yeah. She even follows up with that. Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you treat someone like that? How does that work?
And he shrugs.
Yeah, he shrugs at her. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, horrible.
Yeah.
And then he then says, "I'm in love with her. I'm in love with Anna." So.
Yeah. I think he wasn't willing to make the adult choice because, like, everybody, you have connections with people whenever you meet them. How it comes about, like, you won't know until it actually happens. But I think as an adult, especially at 35, we'll say he's 37 at this point, as a human being who is that age and who has been through life, and you're dealing with somebody who's in their early 20s, like, you have to make the adult decision, not do what you're about to do. But I think this is why he's selfish, because he doesn't actually care consequence of the other. And I think Anna doesn't care the consequence of her necessarily because of what happens like towards the ends with her relationships. But like, I think she's the settler. He's the one who just like goes off of whims. I guess you could say Larry's like a casualty, but he's not, because he is his own entity. But Alice kind of is.
Yeah.
In a way.
I agree. Oh yeah. Look at us breaking it down.
Breaking it down.
Oh man. So we have Alice sitting on a chair as Dan is standing like a child up against the door, and she says, "Can I still see you?" And he doesn't respond to her, and she whips her head and, you know, super sad, and she said, "Can I still see you?" And
the way that she said, "Dan, can I still see you?" I was like, "Oh, this is devastating. I'm sick."
Right.
I'm sick.
Same. He says, "I can't see you. If I see you, I'll never leave you." And she says,
I think that's a cop-out. That's a cop.
Yeah, like, it's such a cop-out. It's such a cop-out. He made his choice. He knows what he wants. I don't know. Fuck you, Dan.
Yeah, fuck you, Dan. I agree. Fuck you, Dan.
And then in this moment, one of my favorite things, it's so vulnerable. And this is why she's my favorite character, because, again, she's so open and she's asking all the right things, and she doesn't care how bad it hurts. She just wants to hear the truth. And she says, "You still fancy me?" And he says, "Of course." He answers very quickly. Before, he wasn't answering her very fast at all. He says, "Of course." Yeah. And she kind of smiles, laughs, but also looks completely devastated. And she says, "You're lying." More tears come, and she says, "I've been you."
Yeah.
So she starts crying a little bit harder. Yeah, right? She starts crying a little harder. There's some sobbing, and she says, "Will you hold me?" I don't know.
It's truly, whenever Natalie Portman cries, I'm not even lying, like, it makes it just twist my insides.
Fuck you, Natalie Portman, for making us cry.
Right? Like, all the time, just giving the emotions. I'm like, stop doing that. Like, no, continue to do that, please, because we absolutely love it. But like, I can't. Yeah. Sometimes I just can't deal. And this was the moment. And I, like, this whole time, I'm like, nah, she's manipulative, and then she's doing this. I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Right.
Yep.
Like, she doesn't deserve this, but I'm glad that she does what she does in this next part.
Yeah, and
stick it to him.
Yep. She said, "I amuse you, but I bore you." He says, "No." You know, he's holding her, and she said, "You did love me." And he says, "I'll always love you. I hate hurting you." She said, "Then why are you?"
Yeah.
She just keeps crying, and his response is, because I'm selfish. And I think
Which
that
she is.
I think that I'd be happier with her.
Which is also
Um,
crazy because you're assuming that you're going to be happy with somebody that you don't actually know. He assumes that he knows her, but he doesn't. And that's why I think she says, no one will ever love you as much as I love you. And I
mhm,
think she's on like that's honestly true
yep.
because she did love him entirely to the point where she would dismiss the fact that she knew that he made out with Anna in the loft
Yep.
right before she got there. And it's like, I don't know, she held on to something that wasn't real, think of because of her life circumstances. And that's ultimately what she was. I think she's just trying to find herself. So she's looking for it in other people.
Yeah, she's, you mentioned, based on the play, we know her age, so she's young, and
Mhm.
she's trying to figure all out. And she says, why is love never enough? And then she's like, I'm the one who leaves. I'm supposed to leave you. I'm the one who leaves.
Yeah.
So, it's a cycle that she was used to. So I do believe her when she says, like, I love you. This is love. I'm not just using love as, some random word that people just throw around. I actually love you. And this is case in point. And,
Mhm.
um, they start kissing and they have a moment together. And she says, I'm going to make you some tea, Buster, because she loves to call him
Yeah.
Buster. I don't think we mentioned that
Yeah.
before, but she calls him
We
Buster all the
didn't.
time. Yeah.
Uh,
Little pet name. Little pet name, Buster.
Which is so funny because, like, of all the names that she could have said, Buster.
Yep.
Wild.
Hmm. Yep. So Dan decides to go over and start making some tea. He's grabbing some coffee mugs, and he goes to ask her a question, and he sees the front door of the apartment open, and Alice is gone.
Props to her for getting downstairs out the door around the corner that quickly because
Listen,
he did not catch up to her.
Natalie Portman's tears fall like crazy, and she runs like a wild
She
banshee
said,
out there.
she gone. Like,
Sweet,
just
see ya.
gone.
Her knee
He's
must
looking
be
around
feeling
like,
better from all those years ago when she got hit by a taxi.
yes, honestly. She just zooms right on out of there. Crazy. That
Crazy.
killed me. Crazy.
Yeah, I do feel bad like going through so much dialogue, but that this movie is very dialogue heavy, and some of the things that are being said are just so important and so good.
Agreed.
So we cut to the next scene, and this is probably my favorite scene in the movie.
Really?
And you're gonna feel the opposite. It's fine.
I do.
Yeah. So this is Brittany's least favorite scene in the movie, but I don't know why. Since 2004 when I saw this movie, the scene just always stuck with me. So whenever I talk about this movie, this is usually a scene I refer to. It is, to me, it's very honest, and obviously Brittany is obviously disagreeing is obviously fine. So I'd love to hear
Yes.
like what you don't love about it, and all of that. So what I'm saying obviously is to my opinion, and then obviously to Brittany's opinion.
Yes.
So that's, again, the great thing about the Reaction Shot podcast. We get to talk about these things.
Yeah.
So we cut to Larry, and we cut to Anna still in their loft, and Larry comes down the steps, and he's dressed. And at this point in time we know it's nighttime, so she's like, why are you dressed? And he says, I think it's because you're about to leave me. So
Dude.
at first we're just kind of like, what? He must know about her and Dan. And before she says anything, he says, I slept with someone in New York. So,
Uh-huh.
and then the person that he slept with, as he refers to this person, he says, I slept with a whore. So she's definitely a little taken back by this. And
Uh-huh.
she says, why did you tell me? And he said, I couldn't lie to you. So this whole scene, though, obviously we'll talk about a little bit more, but do you want to know all these things? So if you, Brittany, or listener, if you're in the situation where you're finding these things out, are you asking all of these questions, or are you shutting down and getting out? So
I
he
think
says,
maybe both. Like I would want to know solely because if I don't know, I'm always gonna probably think of the absolute worst. And also if you're not willing to tell me, then we're like you're holding back something from me that I should at least know. But again, I think it's building on friendship personally, in my eyes, I feel like relationships
Hmm.
should start off as friendships because you need a solid base to actually be in a relationship. Because I've seen some pretty piss poor relationships and they are indeed married, and I'm just like, see,
Mm,
y'all are just out there lying, and it's weird, but
yeah.
somehow you're still together. Like, what type of relationship do you guys actually have? So I would much rather know, and then I can decide if I want to stay or not.
Yeah.
That's in my eyes.
No, yeah, for sure. I love this scene because it's I f- I mean, I don't know tons of people in situations like this, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's such a tough conversation to have. It's tough to
Yes.
be this open and honest in such a tough situation. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that they are both doing it. And I don't know, it's tough. And she tells him, she says, it's fine. It's
Oh,
fine.
right. Like, no, it's not. It's not fine.
Yeah.
But she knows it's fine because of what she's done.
Yeah. So now he's like, why is it fine? He says, just tell me. And he says, are you leaving me? So she takes a moment and she gives him a nice little head nod. And he's like, because of this? And she says no. And she said, it's Dan. And he was like,
Cupid.
kind of taken back by that. And he says, Cupid, he's
Yeah.
our joke. Like, he's our joke. So
Yeah.
the character, so Dan in their life is a punchline, but now that punchline has become so prominent in their relationship, and it's at that punchline is now the demise of their relationship.
Yes. But also for, I guess, for her argument, the fact that the fact that Larry knew about him despite her talking shit, she's clearly always loved Dan from the beginning
Yeah.
in
Yep.
some way or form. Because he even asked her, or whenever they first meet, Larry said, "Are you interested in him?" And she goes, "No, he's interesting." So there was always something about him that she was intrigued by. And because she's never actually explored it, I think she wants to in this
Hmm.
point. And I think that's what, like, in my head in later scenes, like, changes it because she does experience it and she's like, oh, maybe actually I don't like you that
Yeah.
much, which is fair because honestly sometimes that happens with people. Like, you
Hmm.
make connections with somebody and you think it's like this real thing until you know them, because again, you don't know somebody until you know them, and sometimes you find out things about them and you're not willing to actually say this is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. You're not wrong. Yeah. So she admits to him that she's been seeing Dan and sleeping with him on the side since her exhibit, which was a year ago.
Which is crazy. That timeline,
Right.
I said, what?
I
Damn.
know. Same. I was like a
And you
whole
married
damn
him?
year.
Like, what
Right.
the
Right. Wow.
like, again, and that's manipulative her in her sense because
Mhm.
she's just out there lying
Yep.
and getting married. Like,
Yep.
what? You can't do that. You can't do that. You gotta make adult decisions and
Yep.
choose that before the money, the time, the people. Like, come on. Weddings are expensive.
Weddings are expensive. My God. Yeah.
Like, stop. That's not something
It's
you're just willy-nilly doing. I'm
no.
assuming they
Yeah.
probably like eloped or whatever, but still, like, that's still mindset if they did have a wedding. Because this is, well, I don't know if this is the first time he's married. Because again, how old are these people? I need
Yeah.
to know.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what his situation was prior. I know she was married before, so this
Yeah,
would be her
yeah.
second marriage.
And I'm assuming because he's in his maybe like his 40s, because I think he's 20 years older than Alice. So I clocked in at like 44. So maybe he has been married before. I don't
Huh.
know. He seems like too creepy to have been, but
Yeah.
to each their own out there.
Right. Yeah. And then so he slept with a woman
Mhm.
over his business trip on the weekend. He comes home immediately. He's like, I think you're gonna leave me. I slept with a whore. She has been sleeping
Yes.
with somebody for an entire year, and it's not until this moment that she's finally admitting that to him.
Mhm.
So very villainous of her because now she's using it that, oh well, you were doing that, oh well, so was I.
And I can leave
But
now. And it's like she
yeah,
has her excuse, and it's like, no, you've been cheating for this whole time.
right, right. And he says, she's like, I'm disgusting, and he says, you're phenomenal, you're so clever,
Yeah.
why did you marry me? She said, I stopped seeing him and I wanted us to work out. He said, then why did you tell me that you wanted children? And she said, because I did. And he says, but now you
Hmm.
want children with him? And she says, yes. And then she shakes her head and she's like, I don't know. Like, these probing questions, like, he's so, like, I don't think Larry's a good character. Like, I don't think he's a good person, but
Yeah. No,
the
definitely
things
not.
he's asking, like probing her, like, these are the things that sometimes we want to ask people that we don't always get to or want to have the nerves to say, or even want
Yes.
to know the answers to. Sometimes people want to know the answers to these things. It's,
Agreed.
all right,
And they
you
will
did
not
this and I'm
ask,
out.
and they won't ask the questions because they are too afraid of what the answer is going to be.
Yeah, so he keeps asking her more questions, like, but we were happy, and then he says, but weren't we? And he said, why did you do this to me the day we met? Were you, the second I walked through the door, why didn't you just say something to me? And she says, I don't know, I was scared. He says, you're a coward, you're a spoiled bitch. So, like, now he's getting a lot more intense, and he says, are you dressed because you thought that I might hit you? And then she stands up and she kind of like walks to him and she says, who do you think I am? And she says, I've been hit before. He immediately cuts her off while she's saying that. And he says, not by me.
Yeah,
So,
that was intense. I was like, oh God.
yeah, I got chills from that moment too. So, like,
Yeah, because he's like, stop comparing our relationship with other, like, your past relationship, because this is absolutely not like what I am in
yeah,
this situation.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now he's angry. Now he's past the point of trying to understand. Now he understands and he's pissed. So now he starts getting a little bit more intense with his questions, and he says, was he a good fuck? And she says, do not do this. Like, we're not having this conversation. He asked her things like, is it good? Was it good? Is it better than me? And when he says that, she actually responds to him. She says, it's different. And he says, better.
Yeah.
And she says, no, just different. More gentler. So he basically says, don't say you're leaving me because you believe that. You don't say you're leaving me because you don't deserve happiness. Like, don't say that. Like, you deserve to be happy. And I don't know. I mean, I could sit here and say all the things that he says to her. I mean, he gets very, very graphic with her questions.
Yes.
And yeah, so he asked her the one question which goes into the Fall Out Boy song, and he asked her if she went as far as to be intimate with him that she swallowed. And he says yes. And he says, how does he taste? And she says, like you, but only sweeter. Like, she gets very angry because you have literally asked me every disgusting question that you could possibly ask. You have gone beyond the point of this conversation, being okay. Like, I told you we've been having this affair for an entire year. Yes, we've had sex. I've covered that. We don't need to get more intimate than that. But he wants to know all the nitty gritty stuff. And
Yeah.
that's pretty intense. And then he starts asking her all the places that they had sex, and they start yelling at each other. They're kind of running through the apartment and they're grabbing bags, and she finally, as she grabs all of her stuff, the most important conversation piece that we get from this is she grabs her bags, she's clothed, she starts running down the steps to go out to the front door, and he follows her, and she says, why is sex so important to you? And he says, because I'm a fucking caveman. He asks her a few more questions and she answers them very quickly. And finally she starts yelling at him and she says, we do everything that people who have sex do. He asks her a couple more questions, very graphic. She answers, yes, 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 yes. And they're screaming at each other at this point in time. And finally he says, that's the spirit. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Now fuck off and die. And then he calls her like a fucked up slag, which
I was like, British lingo is crazy. Don't know what that means, but it's probably bad.
I know. I just
great.
said it. I'm sorry if it's like ultra offensive, but
know.
it's what he says. So yeah. So again, I'm sorry running through a lot of that dialogue, but it's very dependent. And that was such an honest conversation piece. It's so intense. I think their acting is phenomenal in this scene. Do you feel different? Do you like their acting?
So I think what was happening, because again, I was like, them, I'm not believing a relationship type deal. So there was like a disconnect, because I feel like at one point, Anna, Julia Roberts, was kind of not laughing, but there was like a not so serious aspect to the conversation. I was just like, what are they even fighting about? Like, do they even care about each other? Because I feel like they don't. But now, like, having watched it a couple of times and you kind of going over it, I see what you saw the first time that you saw it. So, like, the scene is very intense, and I could only imagine actually having that type of conversation with somebody, because I just be like, because, like, what do you even say? You're being questioned, interrogated in your own home, one, because you just did something crazy, and it just happened right before you got here. So that's just like a heightened thing. You shouldn't have done that. Like, ultimately, you just shouldn't have done that.
Right. Yep. Well,
Yeah,
so
so the scene for what it is, absolutely, like, and you can tell, like, these bigger scenes, you can tell that it's a play of how, like, the camera is moving and how they're going to, like, different parts of the room, but it's kind of like a continuous shot of them, like, just kind of walking in circles with each other.
Yeah, I used
I like
to
that.
always say, yeah, me too. I think everything about that scene was shot really well. The acting is phenomenal. The writing is fantastic. And I used to always say that scene, if I had like an acting class or something, or if I was in an acting class, like to have that scene be something that somebody acted out, or like to be that be a scene that you would put two people together to, because it's so intense. It's very vulgar, but I feel like if you just let yourself go there, I think that's a big piece of the acting that really gets you into your character and stuff. So I don't know. I really like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So new scene now. Possible little time jump. We are at a strip club, and Brittany, do you want to walk through the strip club scene here with Larry and Alice?
Well, Larry appears at this club because he looks disheveled. He looks unwell, like he hasn't slept for days, probably hasn't eaten, just he's not doing great after this
Oh,
breakup. He is
not at all.
heartbroken, which I'm honestly shocked of how much he liked her, like loved her in such a short
Yeah.
amount of time. But like, hey, I'll give that to
Okay.
you. But he looks unwell. So he walks in, he sees Alice in her pink wig, which was fire. Absolutely love it. And he's like, I know her. Takes her into a private room and gets a little dance from his long lost stranger that he met at the exhibit of his now estranged wife for now.
Yep.
They're having some issues.
Yeah, the scene is he's flirting with her. She's obviously back to stripper days. She's resorted back to this. She's unhappy and asking her a bunch of questions. And I like how he keeps asking her questions, handing her money, and she's like, "Thank you,
I
thank
know every
you."
time she says thank you can tell it pisses him off more and more. And he's
Yep.
like, if you don't shut the fuck
Just,
up. I was
he says thank you. Is that some kind of rule? And she's like, "No, I'm just being
she's like, no,
polite."
just being polite. I was
But
like, again, you tell him, girly, get him.
yep,
I was like, don't let him tell you otherwise.
right.
But yeah, no, I love that scene, honestly, between the two of them. Because again, I feel like Natalie Portman and Clive Owens has this like this really intense chemistry with their two characters.
I agree. He also says some very vulgar things to her in there.
Crazy, unhinged things. And I'm just like,
Yeah, I was like, holy shit! Is that what you boys talk about in these rooms with these ladies? Like, come on, man.
right? Like, come on. And I've been to strip clubs before. Again, another story. But
On the
but
next episode of
actually, whenever I have gone, I've just watched people watch the dancers, because men in those spaces are the
yeah.
creepiest human beings. Therefore, Larry being here doesn't shock me
Yep.
at all.
Yeah.
Because he was there for a mission, and I don't know if he knew that he was going to find her or what, but like he was there. He was ready for whatever was going to happen.
Right. And this scene is very important for one specific thing, and he asks her, why did Dan leave you? And he says, he's like, what's your name? Because there's a girl out there who calls herself Venus. What's her real name? And she's like, Pluto. And he's like, oh, you're cheeky.
Yeah.
So he's basically like, he says, what's your name? And she says, well, he asks her, he's like, what's your name? And he's like, Daniel, I'm a dermatologist. And he's like, I want to know your name. And she's like, what's her name? Do you know what her name is?
Her name is Jane Jones. And he goes, tell me your real name. She goes, Jane Jones. Over and over again. And it makes him so infuriated. Love this scene.
Me too. Yeah, the scene is really well done. I love the way that it's filmed. I love the colors
The
and
coloring of it, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Good cinematography there. And
Hmm.
he does break down and cry a little bit. At one point in time, and she's like, oh boy, here we go, another
Yeah,
crying
she's like,
man in
please don't
here.
cry in this room. Like, this
Yeah,
is
she's like,
gross.
you can't do
Super
that.
icky. Get on out.
Yep.
It's not what this is for.
So Alice told him that her name is Jane and whatever. So, excuse me. So we move on, cut to a completely different scene, of course. Here we see Dan. He's with Anna. They looks like they just went to a show and they're getting a drink after the performance, and getting some more drinks. Um, she talks about how she ran into it said she ran into him, correct? Larry, that she ran into Larry.
Yes, because she was getting the divorce papers signed.
Correct. Yep.
She was going to him to get the papers signed.
Yeah. Yep. So she went to him to go get the divorce paper signed to make everything official. And he's being an asshole, but at the same exact time, he's like, I love you, please come back. And she's like, I'm not coming back to you. Just sign the damn divorce papers and we'll call it a day. And
Yeah.
what does he ask her after he throws his hand onto hers? He's still wearing his wedding ring. She obviously is not. Do you remember what he wants to do with her?
Excuse my language. Treat her like a whore and fuck her in the hotel room.
Yep.
Because that's how this has to end.
Yep.
Which was, again, so creepy because if you love somebody, you would just let them go. If how he's acting, he's like, no, I need your body, I think is what he says. Like, give me your body. And then I'll give you your liberty. Gross.
So gross. So gross. And then he also says, after all of that, he then says, you owe me something for deceiving me so exquisitely.
Right? Like, no, she don't owe you shit.
Yeah, like, fuck you, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, like, it's like, actually, you're going to sign this and I'm going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're going to do.
Yeah. So we cut, so we're in that scene, but then we cut back to the scene where she and Dan are getting a drink after a performance of some kind. And he asks her, upon hearing this, he says, did you sleep with him?
Can I just say one thing about, like, I like to look at background thingies. The fact that she got a gin and tonic without ice really sent me to a different place that I never thought that I knew. Because whenever he ordered it, I was like, okay, they're going to throw some ice in there. Oh, they're not? And they didn't do it just once. They did it twice because they did it whenever they already got her a gin and tonic as well. And I was sick.
That is gross. I didn't notice that, but yeah.
I did. I was like, there has to be ice in that. There's not? Okay. Okay, we're just drinking straight gin with some tonic water. Perfect.
That's pretty gross. That drink's as gross as some of these relationships here. Damn.
Uh-huh. We should have known. We should have known better.
Should have known.
By the
should have.
By those
we knew that's what's gonna happen.
Yes. But what was the question you just asked me? Sorry.
Oh no, you're good. So he when we jump back to this, he asks her, he's like, did you sleep with him? And she immediately says yes. And then he storms off. That's his response. So, when Larry found out that she had slept with somebody, he, chased her around the apartment asking her 9,000 questions about how good the sex was. And in this situation with the two of them, he kind of runs away from it. He doesn't want to face it. She obviously follows him and she says, why didn't you lie to me? And she says, because we said that we would always tell each other the truth. And he says, what's so great about the truth? And then he says a really, really popular line, something about, what is it? The currency, lying is the currency of the world.
I don't even know. I don't think I picked up on that.
Yeah, he says, yeah. So he asked, like, why didn't you lie to me? And she said, we promised we'd always be truthful with one another. And he says, well, try lying for a change. It's the currency of the world.
Yeah, that is a profound statement.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this whole movie is about lying. Even whenever, to jump back to the exhibit, whenever Alice and Larry are looking at her photo and he asks her about how she feels about the whole exhibit before he actually says, like, oh, I'm actually dating the artist. She's like, it's all a lie. It's just sad people taking photos beautifully. And it's true. Like, people like life. Because he asked her what she was sad about, and she said life. Because life is sad, life is happy, life is infuriating, life is life. But at that moment, like, you can tell, like, these people, there's a lot of stakes. So for him to say that is like the theme for this whole movie.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's a good way to put it. It's like, even like with this scene, so unlike the other parts where we kind of stick with one couple or one person, this scene is jumping back and forth to Anna and Larry sleeping together, and then Dan and Anna having the conversation about breaking up and admitting to the infidelity and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
so then finally when that scene's over, we cut to good old Dan. He's heading to Larry, and he tells, there's definitely a time jump.
He's so pathetic.
So pathetic. There's a time jump here too, correct? Like when he
I
goes to it.
think so. It's a couple of months. So I actually don't know, only because like during this scene, Larry talks to Dan about going back to Alice. So it has to be in like, we'll say maybe 6 months from
Okay, yeah.
when she found out about it, when Larry saw Alice at the strip club, and then when the divorce stuff is happening. This part kind of confused me with the time.
Yeah, so like Brittany said, I'm not 100% sure exactly where we're at in the time frame. If it is a little bit of a jump in the future, I don't think it's like super far, maybe a couple months.
Yeah,
but
definitely within the year.
Yeah, so Dan comes to the office to see Larry and basically say, I want Anna back. Please let me have Anna. He's like, I love Anna, and she deserves to be with me because she deserves to be happy. And Larry says she doesn't want to be happy. Like, what? She doesn't want to be happy.
So crazy, because like he really thinks that he knows her better than she knows herself.
Yeah. He then refers to her as depressive. He says depressives don't want to be happy. They want to be unhappy to confirm that they are depressed. Like, crazy.
Yeah, like it's like, what do you even mean by that?
Yeah.
Because
Larry's a very pompous asshole in this scene. Like, he's being very, very ignorant towards Dan, regardless of all the things.
Because he knows that he has a one-up.
Yeah. He's like, I got the girl. She's mine, and you'll never have her again. He refers to Dan as a towering romantic hero, and nothing that they don't have anything in common with one another. And he says, but nevertheless, she chose me, so I must be what that woman respects and wants. Crazy. He's like, okay, get out of my office. I have patients to see. And another very infamous line, he says, you're an animal. And he says, yeah, well, what are you? He says, you think that love is so simple. And Dan says, Larry says, have you ever seen a human heart? It looks like a fist wrapped in blood. Crazy.
Which I was like, oh yeah, because he calls them, like the way that he calls him a writer, like he was just like, you're just stuck on your words. Like, it's so disgusting. And I was just like, oh my God, he needs to leave the office. He's getting ripped to shreds. He's just allowing it.
Yep. Yeah, Larry stands up and he's so angry, so pissed off, and he kind of lunges out of his chair and says, go fuck yourself, you writer. He calls him a liar. He says, you go check a few facts while I get my hands dirty. That's it. And then Dan's like, she hates your hands. She hates your simplicity. So he also says, Larry says, I know that Anna used to say that she didn't like having sex with you because you fucked her with your eyes closed. Like, that's not a man. It's over. Just accept it. Like, and then Jude Law's acting here. He was
going in. He's really so good.
Yeah, and then then Dan starts to cry, and he's like, I don't know what to do. I just love her so much. And then Larry says, you want some advice? Just go back to Alice. Go be with Alice. He was like, she would never have me. And then he lets her know that she resorted back to stripping, and then she's at a strip club, and he gives her the address to the strip club to go see Alice, to rekindle their relationship. And then we cut to them in the future, and lo and behold, Dan and Alice are together. They're in bed, they're laughing, they're in New York City, having a good time.
They're about to go to New York City. I think they're still...
Yes, so you're right. Yep, they're, I think they're at a hotel room before their flight.
Yeah, like right outside the airport, which I just noticed this last time that I watched. I said, oh, they're in an airport hotel, because like, why else are they in that room? I was so confused the first time. So what are they doing?
Yeah. So they're super cute and lovable, and we're like, okay, cool, we're great. And he's like, I'm gonna go make some sandwiches, and she's like, okay. Yeah, he also refers to taking his contacts out as taking his eyes out, which I used to always say too. I think I still do. I think a lot of people do. I'm gonna take my eyes
That's what
out.
my mom would say whenever I was growing up. She would
I
say, "Let
love
me
it.
take my eyes out." I'm like,
Yep. Yeah,
"You're
like
taking your
mom, that's
eyeballs
scary.
out?"
Put
She's
them
like, "Come on,
back.
yeah, like throw them back in, hurry."
I got my fake ones in today.
Yeah, and you're like, "Oh, that's weird." And then they,
So they were, of course, in typical Alice fashion, she is asking Dan a lot of questions while he's brushing his teeth and getting ready for bed. And she's asking him about the first time they met, like, what was I wearing? What color? How many stitches did I get? What color were the chairs? And then she asks him like some relationship questions, like, why did we never take a vacation when we were together? And then she's like, just come to bed. So Dan finally gets into bed with her, and he says, if you could have chosen anyone, why did you choose me? And he asked her if she would like decide to stop stripping. And he said, I had this vision of you. You were perfect when I first met you. He said the taxi cab driver saw me kissing you, and he said, is she yours? And he responded and said, yes, she is mine. He was like, so that's how I remember you. You were a vision when I first met you, and it's a romantic story. And what can you tell us about the rest of this conversation between the two of them? Do you remember how it all plays out?
it turns dark because how does it come about that she
So
I feel like they have like an argument or something, and he's like, oh no, I just have to leave and go grab something, because
Mhm.
he had asked her what happened with Larry whenever he went to the strip club, and she was
Yep.
telling him, and he was like, so nothing happened? She was like, no, like he came in, I stripped him, like he obviously saw me naked, I'm a stripper, he gave me money, asked questions, then he left. That's it.
Yep.
And he's like, okay. And she's like, okay, something weird.
Yeah, so on the flip of the conversation that Larry and Anna had, basically Dan is asking her, he's like, when Larry came to the club, did you sleep with him? I want to know. And she's like, why do you want to know? Like, what do you want to know about? And he's like, because I want to know everything. And she's like, but nothing happened. Like, nothing happened between us. And that answer is not good enough for Dan. Dan wants to hear what no one wants to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, like, why do you want to hear
Even
that?
though he didn't want to hear it from Larry, he
Yeah.
hated the fact that Larry said something to him.
Right.
But he's demanding that she says something.
Mm-hmm.
He's demanding Alice answers his questions.
Yep. And he says, I'm going to go to the terminal, and when I get back, I want you to tell me the truth. And she's like, why? He says, because I'm addicted to the truth, because without it, we're just animals.
Which
so
is
she doesn't...
which he was lying. He was, at that point, he's lying.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not addicted to the truth. He's addicted to lying.
Yep. He's addicted to all the lies.
That's what we do. That's the currency of this world, is lying.
That is
what you're doing to get the fucking answer.
Yep.
He's crazy.
Yep. So he leaves the hotel room. He collects his thoughts and maybe realizes I'm being a little crazy.
Harsh.
And and he sees a rose outside of someone's hotel room from like a dinner or whatever. And he grabs the rose and he skips back to the room real excited. And Alice just looks like completely over it. And he's like putting the flower in her face. And he's like, look what I got you. And as she's staring at him, she looks at him and says, I don't love you anymore.
Yeah. But like, she knew, she felt the moment of, this is over.
Yep.
She's accepted it now.
She's fully accepted it. That whole conversation, nothing's going to ever change. She's never fully going to be able to trust him, and he's always going to maybe assume the worst of her and want to hear all that nitty gritty stuff that she's not perfect, because he's going to constantly keep looking for that perfection out there with somebody else. So he's like, why are you saying this? And she's like, well, I don't want to lie. Like, I don't love you anymore. I can tell you the truth. And the truth is, it's over. And he's like, it doesn't matter. It's whatever. And she says goodbye.
Yeah.
And they just keep staring at each other. And she says, I actually want to tell you the truth. Larry actually fucked me all night that night. Here's the truth. She said, so now you can hate me? Yeah. So she tells him that, and she tells him, I enjoyed it. She says, I prefer you, but I did it. And that's it.
Yeah.
And then Dan says, he told me, but I needed to hear it from you. And she's like, wait, you already knew that we had sex? And he says, because he might have been lying, so I had to hear it from you. And she said, I would never have told you wouldn't forgiven me. And he said, I have, because I already knew about it. I already forgave you. How fucked up? Like, what?
Yeah, I mean, he put her in a corner that she never knew existed. Now, should she have told him? No, because they weren't together.
Right.
He was leaving her, so she left first, but like ultimately the reason why they were together is because of him. So he shouldn't be mad about that. Sure, be mad about the person, but the act itself, no, sir. Wait,
Mm-hmm.
like you again, you still can't be mad because you caused this. You caused everybody to actually meet. Larry is your fault.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Like Dan, God, yeah. So in this scene, in the continuation, they start having a little bit more tense conversation about this, and she goes to call security, right?
Security. Yeah.
And then he throws her job in her face, and he says, "This is not the strip club. You can't just call security whenever you want to."
I know, which
And
is like also you're a dick for saying that. But
yeah, right.
I thought like house security like that.
I know. Do they? I
I
don't
don't
know.
I don't think so. I don't know.
So she goes to grab the phone, and he jumps across the bed and grabs the phone from her hand. And he's like, "Why did you fuck him?" And she said, "Because I desired him." And she says, "But why did you?" He says, "Why did you do it?" Because she says, "You weren't there." And then she's being silly. She's like, "He asked me nicely, so of course I did it." And he's like, "You're a liar." And he screams at her, and he says, "Who are you?" And she starts to cry a little bit, and she says, "I'm no one." And then she spits in his face. And then he goes to hit her. And just as he
And
goes to
she
hit
said,
her, she said,
"Uh-huh."
uh-huh. And he stops. And when he stops for a second, she says, "Go on, hit me. That's what you want. Hit me, you fucker." And what does he do, Brittany?
Slaps her across the face. I said, "You didn't." That's crazy. But also it
Yep.
kind of makes me think like because Larry said to Anna, "I've never hit you." I wonder if Anna has ever been hit by Dan, and we just never saw it. So it's
Mm,
kind of like this. I don't
okay.
know,
Good
because the
connection.
fact that he like did it, so like he thought for a second, but he was already slapping her.
Oh, yeah.
He was already
Yeah.
doing that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like maybe that's why Anna left, and we
Good.
just
Yeah.
don't
I
know it.
never made that connection. Yeah. Yeah. I just, fuck. Yeah. So he hits her, and the screen goes white. We hear the sound of an airplane, and we go back to the first song in the film where the movie starts by Damien Rice. That song is playing, and we see Anna lying in bed with Larry. They have the newspaper in the bed. It looks like they were like reading together. They're going to sleep. Larry has already fallen asleep, so Anna turns his light off, rolls over, and she's kind of staring off into the abyss.
Still miserable.
Still miserable is what I was going to say. Staring off into the abyss, and she just doesn't look happy, but she looks like maybe she has set herself to be complacent. And we cut to the next scene, and we see good old Alice walking up through customs to leave London to make her trip to New York City, and Dan is not with her. She's at customs, and she hands her passport over. And the customs officer opens up her passport, and we as the audience get to see her cute little picture with her cute little red hair.
Ghosting.
But what's interesting about this passport we see, Brittany?
That her name is not Alice Ayres, but it's Jane Jones.
Jane Jones. And
Which
where
my brain was just like,
yeah,
where the
where did
hell
we
is she?
where did we hear the name Jane Jones before in the movie?
We heard it on one of those slabs of people who died being heroes,
Oh
and
yeah, so
Alice Ayres was one of them.
Alice Ayres was the name that she saw on the, like you said, the slab of people who have passed away when she had met Dan and they were walking through that courtyard. She had saw that, and she used that name Alice Ayres as an alias for her actual name being Jane Jones. So in the movie, when they're at the strip club, when Alice is there, well, when Jane is there dancing, Larry keeps asking her what the truth is, like, tell me everything about yourself. And he says, "What's your name?" You guys all use, fake names and stuff like that. And she's like, "My name's Jane." And he's like, "No, like, what's your real name?" And she's like, "It's Jane." And he's like, "No, really, what's your name?" She's like, "It's Jane." So the only person in this entire movie that actually knew her actual name and,
Was
a
Larry.
very big piece of our identity was Larry. And then
Without even knowing it, which is,
without even knowing it, and then we cut
but
to
he
a
knew
scene.
it. But he knew it because he knew that she wasn't being honest.
Mm.
Whenever he met her during the exhibit, again, we go back, he's like, "No, she's telling you one thing, but she's actually
Yep.
doing another. And I can see that, but I just don't
Mm-hmm.
know who she is." But he was so lost on the fact that Anna left him that he couldn't actually see past Alice anymore because he just saw red with her,
Yep.
I
Yep.
think.
No, agreed. Agreed. Yeah. So one last scene we got is two last little scenes is Dan walking through that courtyard where he first had that conversation with Jane, and he sees the name Alice Ayres on one of those little plaques in the park, and he's like, "Holy shit!" So he
Never knew
finally
her.
puts those pieces together, and yeah, like you said, they just never really knew each other. And then we finally cut to the last shot of the film, which is good old Jane Jones walking through the crowded Times Square in New York City. A bunch of guys are watching her walk by, just like Dan was in the beginning. And as the
Hmm.
camera slowly starts to pan up, we see a "Don't Cross" sign light up, and we know that that Jane is now crossing the street. So we could assume that, history repeats itself and she might get hit by another taxi cab. And that is the movie, Closer.
That is the movie.
Yeah.
And I think before we like finish it up, I think that
Mhm.
last part of her not actually looking at any of these men, looking at
Yeah.
her, just shows that like that she is her own person in Jane Jones, and maybe she wanted to, whenever she went to London, she wanted to be somebody different and somebody new,
Mhm.
and that worked for a little bit, but now she's like, I'm back to who I am, and I don't see any of these people because they're not interesting enough to me. And
Yeah.
she's waiting for the next connection, the next stranger.
Absolutely. The Next Stranger. Yeah, that's very good. It's very symbolic, like you said, of those men walking by, before she locked eyes at the beginning of the movie with Dan. Here she's completely ignoring everybody. She's, doing her thing. So as I mentioned, as she's walking through the streets and she's crossing the street, the "Do Not Walk" sign comes on, and we keep panning upwards. We won't say anything past that. I do want to note that the ending of the play is a little bit different.
Hmm?
So the movie stays very true to the original play, but there's one major exception, and the play closes with Dan and Anna speaking briefly on a park bench several years after Alice and Dan break up. Dan tells her that
Hmm.
Alice had been hit by a car in New York City and had died, and that he was the only one the authorities could find to identify her body. However, the film closes with Alice alive, well, and confidently walking through New York City. But the very last shot as she's walking across the road in Manhattan is a pan tilt up of a red "Don't Walk" signal, thus hinting that her fate may go the same direction as mentioned in the play.
That's fucking nuts.
Right.
And I actually didn't even notice the stop, the
Mm-hmm.
don't walk sign until you said that. That's
Crazy, right?
so crazy. But that's actually really clever. Change it and not, because we don't actually know. Because
Yeah.
it could have happened.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. I think for the film to come to the end, I think the film ended on a good note. I think
Hmm.
getting one more scene with Dan and Anna on a bench, I think at that point we'd be like, "Oh, these two are
Too
gonna fuck
much.
again." Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh great, they're still together, but not.
Yeah, right.
And
So,
even, and I guarantee you, in their third universe, their lives, they probably have this like weird thing. Though Larry said, if you ever speak or look at her again, I'll kill you.
yeah.
Like, there's something. If that would have happened, it would have been like, no, we're in this carousel of life that these two people can't actually ever get away from each other. So
Mhm.
I'm glad that they didn't show that, because I didn't want a sequel. And I
Yeah,
love
no sequels. It would be called a little bit too closer now, or something.
too
Too
close.
closer. Yeah, too close.
Too
Too close for
close.
comfort. So yeah, that is Closer. Thanks for walking through it with me. I did ask a couple people what they thought about Closer when they saw it. The one I liked
Yes.
the answer I liked the most comes from a friend of mine. His name is Zach. Not my Zach, but a friend
Yes.
named Zach.
Different
And
Zach.
he's
Okay.
yeah, different Zach. He said, "I was obsessed with this film when it first came out. I saw it in theaters twice. The performances are fantastic across the board. I was majorly rooting for Portman and Clive Owen to win Oscars that year. I think it was very ahead of its time, and I've been long overdue for a rewatch." Yeah, I think as we get older, again, this movie came out 20 years ago. I saw it, at that point in time. I think, I was a junior in high school, and I didn't have relationships like this. Like I had nothing to compare that to. And,
Yeah.
now that you get older, I mean, again, obviously I'm in a happy relationship, but we've had, I think at this point in our lives, we have been with people,
Mhm.
short or long term, that we've had unfortunate conversations with, and so definitely becomes a little bit more
and hard
relatable over time.
conversations are definitely needed in any type of relationship, and I feel
Mhm.
like more people need to have hard conversations,
I
because
agree.
if they would have, then that whole movie would never have existed.
Right.
They said he would have been like, "Hey, yo, Alice, I can't be with you anymore. You
Right.
gotta go."
Right. Yeah. It's just,
But no,
I mean,
instead he said, "Actually, I'm gonna have you and her."
yep. Yeah. So,
Ugh.
well, that's the movie Closer. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
After watching it and like actually breaking it down as much as we have, I like the film for what it is.
Mhm.
I'm still a little iffy, but
Okay.
like it's not as jarring the first time I watched it, because I was like, I'm not feeling this at
Yeah.
all. But after watching it a few times and like really actually analyzing the characters, I like it. I like it a little bit more. So after all that, I'll give it a 6. I'll give it a 6 out of
Okay.
10.
You bumped up a
Yeah.
little bit. I like it. Okay.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. What did
Good.
you rate this film?
Yeah. So my rating for the film, I honestly give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I have my little nitpicks with it, but I think overall it's the performances and the writing just blow it out of the water. I do
Mhm.
feel like I think it kind of got lost in the shuffle over time. I feel like it needs to be talked about a little bit more. I would actually love to see the play.
Same.
I haven't researched if it's like still going on, but I do know based on one article I did read, it mentioned a performance in 2022. So should be, or at
Oh,
least,
that'd be
yeah,
cool. And I
yeah.
also feel like it would be different because, again, how we talked about Kate Blanchett was supposed to originally be Anna. I feel like there's a different type of like cadence and dialogue and vocabulary that British people have opposed to like a
Mhm.
British and American person. So I
Sure.
feel like the play would probably make more sense.
Yeah,
Because you
I
know
agree.
how sometimes like plays are dumped into movies and it like kind of gets lost in translation because they try to make it kind of more palatable, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. But like, no, I would definitely would like to see the play
Hell yeah,
for sure.
we'll have to look into it. If it comes to Pittsburgh or Columbus, we can make a day of it.
Yes,
Hell yeah.
I'm down with that. Hell yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Well, Brittany, thanks for joining me on another episode, and I'm sure I'll have you back again real soon for some more fun.
Absolutely. Can't
Hell
wait.
yeah.
I absolutely love this.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks again for doing this, and we'll definitely chat about doing another episode soon. And yeah, I
Yes.
hope you have a good day. Everyone listening, I hope you guys have a great day, and
Yeah.
we'll chat soon.
We'll see you
All right.
soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.